Rise of the European Emperor by Taishan Laonyo.
Chapter 751, Test Cannon. Shenrui and Lu Meng, the two governors, were so busy looking at the big ship that they didn't notice what the batch of guns and cannons sent to the Ming dynasty looked like. Although there were cannons on the ship, they were all mounted on wooden four-wheeled gun mounts, and there was nothing special about them. When the gunners of the Grand Duchy of the North Sea pushed 40 Portuguese cannons to the shooting range with the help of the Ming soldiers, Shenrui and Lu Meng were surprised to find that these cannons were actually equipped with wheels. Hey, these foreign cannons are so unique, they are even equipped with wheels. In this way, the transportation of cannons is much more convenient. Unlike the cannons of my Ming dynasty, they need several people to carry them before they can be deployed. Lu Meng, the right governor who knows a little about military affairs, was amazed. It's quite clever and flexible. Shenrui also agreed. Oh, these Western cannons are so beautiful when I look at them. Looking at the glittering copper cannons, Guangzhou Vanguard Commander Xu Yong said with envy. Because they were to be tribute to the Ming dynasty, these 50 French bronze cannons were all polished. Therefore, at the scene, these copper cannons all emitted a slightly dim golden light. Unlike the copper cannons on the ship, which were not polished and had a dull color. And Xu Yong, a general who drank the blood of his soldiers, couldn't stand things that were the same color as copper coins. Seeing these 40 shiny copper cannons, Xu Yong's eyes were full of copper coins at this time. And Shenrui, the left governor, also nodded and said. This Beihai kingdom is quite submissive. Just these 40 copper cannons are a huge expense. As a governor, in charge of the money and grain of a province, he was naturally more sensitive to the cost. In Shenrui's view, each of these 40 copper cannons weighed several hundred kilograms and was worth tens of thousands of copper coins. For 40 cannons, the copper price alone was worth more than 2 million copper coins, equivalent to more than 2,000 taels of silver, which was definitely a conscientious tribute. Unlike some vassal states, the ivory and spices they contributed, although they were also valuable in the Ming dynasty, were actually ordinary goods in their own countries. For example, ivory can be easily obtained by sending a team of soldiers to hunt a group of elephants, and they just bully the Ming dynasty for lacking such things. Since Shenrui became the governor of Guangdong and was in charge of the Guangzhou maritime customs, he naturally knew the inside story of the tribute from those vassal states. Countries like Beihai state that actually sent dozens of copper cannons were definitely conscientious tribute payers. In fact, most of the diplomatic officials of the Ming dynasty knew very well that the so-called tribute trade was simply a scam. Specifically, it was a scam in which the vassal states brought a group of local specialties to the Ming dynasty to eat and drink, and then brought back a lot of rewards. However, even though they knew it was a scam, the Ming dynasty still flocked to it. Why? Because in the Confucian tradition, all nations coming to pay tribute is the only way to whitewash the world's peace and the country's prosperity. Therefore, the two governors of Menqing were all condescending to those so-called tribute payers. Because they knew that they were just a group of profit-seeking foreign scammers. The Beihai kingdom did not use cheap local specialties to fool the Ming dynasty, but it made Shenrui, the left governor, feel good about it. However, the right governor Lu Meng said disapprovingly. So what? When Jin Gong, our dynasty wants to treat foreign countries well. The Beihai kingdom has paid tribute to 40 copper cannons, which are of high value, but how can the return gift from the Ministry of Rights be light? In short, they will definitely return with satisfaction. Brother Zhixian is right. Just as the two governors were talking, 40 artillery pieces were ready in place. The deployment of these Western artillery pieces is so fast. Lu Meng, who knows a little about military affairs, exclaimed. While they were chatting, 10 of the 40 artillery pieces had been deployed to the predetermined positions and aimed at the targets. This speed was simply unbelievable in Lu Meng's eyes. You know, the artillery of the Ming dynasty is just a thick gun barrel. On the battlefield, the soldiers of the artillery camp first have to use a shoulder pole and a rope to lift the thick gun barrel to the front of the position. Then, they have to dig a pit with a shovel before they can arrange the artillery. But these copper cannons of the Beihai kingdom are extremely simple to arrange because they have wheels. The artillerymen push the gun carriage to the front of the formation, put the hoe behind the gun carriage on the ground, and then start visual aiming. Of course, the hoe of this era is different from the hoe of modern artillery. Because modern artillery has a recoil mechanism and a muzzle brake to offset the recoil, the hoe of modern artillery often needs to be fixed on the ground. Before deployment, a pit must be dug to fix the hoe to prevent the gun from moving after the shelling and affecting the secondary shooting. But the artillery of this era obviously does not have a hydraulic recoil mechanism and a muzzle brake. Therefore, after each shelling, the huge recoil will be transmitted to the gun carriage and eventually to the point where the hoe contacts the ground. In the end, the artillery will retreat as a whole. Therefore, after the bombardment, the artillery needs to push the gun back to its original position. This practice is called resetting. Whether it is an infantry gun or a naval gun, this process is common. Of course, the naval gun will use ropes to pull the gun carriage. The huge recoil generated by the naval gun after firing will break the rope. And this process will offset most of the recoil of the gunboat. Otherwise, the gun carriage may retreat a lot. However, infantry guns are not so troublesome. When deployed, there will be several conical iron components similar to nails where the spade touches the ground. When deployed, these nails will grab the soil. After the bombardment, the gun carriage retreats, and the several contact points will use friction with the ground to offset the recoil to reduce the distance the gun carriage retreats. And the resetting of this infantry gun is very simple, just return to the original position. Before firing, the artillery will use lime to draw a white line on the initial deployment location. After the bombardment, the artillery can push the gun back to the white line position, which is very simple. And re-aiming is also relatively simple. Why? Because the artillery of this era is generally flat shooting. And the enemy is generally only 200 or 300 meters away. At this distance, there is no need to calculate the trajectory, just point the muzzle straight ahead, and at most raise the muzzle slightly. The role of the lookout and the sight is to let the artillery see the target in front and align with the muzzle. According to the agreement, the soldiers of Kiinhusuo erected several broken doors 100 steps away from the shooting range as targets for artillery fire. If you can hit the broken door 100 steps away, you must be an extremely powerful old artillery. No, it's an old gunner. In Guangzhou Qianwei, the gunners who can accurately hit the target 100 steps away with artillery on the shooting range can be counted on one hand. Moreover, those who can do this are basically middle-aged uncles. However, the Beihai State artillery brought by Kong Tai this time are all young people, and there is not even a middle-aged man who looks reliable. According to the traditional concept of the Ming people no hair on the mouth, no solid work, can these young gunners really hit the target 100 steps away? Under the expectant or amusing gazes of the Ming officials and soldiers, the artillerymen of Beihai were making preparations in an orderly manner. Because the artillery was for the Ming dynasty, it was natural to use powdered gunpowder instead of granular gunpowder. For this reason, the Beihai artillerymen had to do one thing before firing, stirring the gunpowder. This is because black gunpowder is actually a mixture of three substances, saltpeter, sulfur and charcoal, rather than a single compound. The three substances have different densities. After long-distance transportation and bumps, they are prone to stratification, the denser ones fall to the lower layer, and the lighter ones go up. Therefore, in the era of powdered gunpowder, the artillerymen had to use a wooden spoon to gently stir the gunpowder powder evenly before firing, and then they could load the gunpowder. The same is true for musketeers. After the gunpowder powder is mixed, it is time to load the ammunition. The loading method of the French bronze breech-loading cannon is very peculiar, because it is breech-loaded. A French cannon is generally equipped with several subguns. What are subguns? In fact, they are similar to the copper shell bullets of later generations. Of course, unlike the copper shell bullets of later generations, the copper shell bullets have been loaded long ago. The subguns of the French cannon need to be loaded on site. Under the surprised eyes of the officials and soldiers of the Ming dynasty, the young gunners of the Beihai kingdom easily loaded all 5 subguns with gunpowder, pressed the iron ball shells in, and stuffed rags to hold their breath. Of course, the fuse was also inserted into the eye of the subgun. After a series of preparations, the gunners of the Beihai kingdom began to perform loading. With the commander's order, the artillerymen put the first subgun into the French cannon. In order to achieve closure, the front end of the subgun is embedded in the barrel. Therefore, after the subgun is put in, there will be a forward push action to make the subgun and the barrel fit better. Then, a wooden plug will be placed at the back to prevent the subgun from moving back and affecting the normal artillery fire. After loading the sub-gun, the loader immediately stood at attention and saluted, indicating that the loading was complete. Seeing that all 10 loaders saluted, indicating that they were all loaded, the commander drew out the command knife and shouted, "Fire!" At the same time, the command knife chopped down heavily. Of course, it was the air that was chopped. Suddenly, 10 torches leaned towards the fuse. In fact, when fighting in Europe, the artillerymen did not use torches, but matchlocks. But in the era when the Ming dynasty had not yet acquired matchlock gun technology, Marin felt that it was more down-to-earth to use torches. Soon, the fuses of the 10 artillery pieces were burned out. Then, there were bursts of continuous bombardment of bang 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 bang. After the smoke dissipated, everyone turned their eyes to the field. The officials and soldiers of the Ming dynasty were surprised to find that 6 of the 10 broken doors used as targets were disintegrated. 6 out of 10, very impressive, exclaimed Lu Meng, who knew a little bit. But soon, the famous soldiers sent to observe the results of the battle reported back more shocking news: 3 of the 4 broken doors that were not disintegrated had a round hole on them. Obviously, they were hit, but the broken doors were of good quality and were not smashed and disintegrated. So, in this round of bombardment, 9 out of 10 of the 10 falconets hit the target. This was definitely an incredible achievement for the Ming artillery. But what stunned the Ming officials and soldiers was that when they learned that the 8th falconet had missed the target, the artillery commander angrily ran to the 8th cannon and slapped the artillery observer who was responsible for aiming. "You useless guy, you can't even aim at such a close distance." The artillery commander's roar resounded throughout the parade ground. After Kong Tai's translation, the Ming officials and soldiers who learned the content of the artillery commander's roar were all stunned. Chapter 752, I'm going to help you push it. He's not satisfied with 9 out of 10. Lu Meng asked in astonishment. Kong Tai smiled awkwardly. He didn't know why the artillery commander Jacob was so harsh. In fact, the artillery commander Jacob was too nervous. After all, before departure, Marin repeatedly emphasized that he had to perform well in front of the Ming officials. So, he was so excited when he saw that the 8th cannon missed. This situation is somewhat similar to the military parade in later generations. It's okay if you have problems at ordinary times, but if you make a fool of yourself in the square military parade, it will be a big problem. Based on this consideration, Jacob was so angry that he pulled the observer of the 8th cannon. However, Jacob's move frightened the officials and soldiers of the Ming dynasty and Ima. Is the artillery of the North Sea Kingdom so powerful? Not satisfied with 9 out of 10. Do you have to hit all of them to be qualified? That's 100 steps away. Therefore, this unexpected scene made the artillery of the North Sea Kingdom suddenly look more powerful in the eyes of the officials and soldiers of the Ming dynasty. Even many civil officials of the Ming dynasty thought that although the Beihai Kingdom was a small and barbaric country, its artillery skills were quite impressive. You know, in the Ming dynasty of the same era, artillery had no sights such as sights and crosshairs, so whether it hit the target or not depended entirely on the personal qualities of the artillerymen. In other words, it was all up to the artillerymen to follow their feelings. Most of the soldiers in the Ming dynasty were illiterate, did not understand angles, and had no sights for them. Therefore, within 20 steps, these artillerymen might be able to use their eyes to measure more accurately. Beyond 50 steps, it was more difficult. At a distance of 100 steps, novice artillerymen basically missed the target, and the hit was definitely a fluke. Even those artillerymen who had been in the artillery for more than 10 years could only hit 5 or 6 out of 10. Of course, if it was really on the battlefield, the hit rate was not important. Because the enemy would definitely be in a swarm. As long as the muzzle angle was not a problem, as long as it was fired straight ahead, it would definitely hit the enemy. Therefore, the artillerymen of the Ming dynasty paid the most attention to the vertical angle of the muzzle, and did not pay much attention to the specific hit rate. Anyway, as long as the muzzle is pointed at one side of the enemy, it will definitely hit a few unlucky guys. Mistakenly hitting the side was not uncommon in the era of homemade artillery. However, without comparison, there is no harm. You, an old artilleryman, can only hit the target 5 or 6 out of 10 times, while a group of young people can hit 9 out of 10 times and still get hit. The gap is quite big. So, Lu Meng asked curiously. Why is your country's artillery so accurate in shooting? Kong Tai came to offer artillery, so naturally he had to brag about the artillery. No other reason, the artillery is excellent. Can the Ming artillery have a try? Kong Tai rolled his eyes and thought, since he came to offer artillery anyway, he could. Of course. Since these artillery are offered as tribute to the Ming dynasty, you can dispose of them at will. Lu Meng nodded and said. That's good. Then he turned to Xu Yong and said. Call a few experienced old artillerymen over and learn how to shoot artillery from them. In addition, those artillerymen do not speak the foreign language, so I'll trouble the envoy to help translate. Kong Tai nodded, but said. Sir, I'm afraid those artillerymen don't speak Mandarin. His worry was not unreasonable. Those soldiers were uneducated and basically could not speak the Daming Mandarin. The local dialects of Guangdong and Guangxi differed greatly from the official language, and it was indeed difficult to communicate. Lu Meng thought for a moment, waved his hand, and said. Lu Xiaocai, you accompany the envoy. Lu Xiaocai was a local and Lu Meng's personal aide, that is, his master. Xiaocai naturally knew the official language, and as a local, he also had no problem speaking the local language, which was just right for him to be used as a translator. Su Yong quickly selected 5 old gunners in their 30s and 40s from the Guangzhou Vanguard Firearms Battalion, and brought a group of young gunners to help, and came to the French cannon to receive training from the Beihai State Artillery. With the help of Kong Tai and Lu Xiaocai, Jacob explained the use of the French cannon in detail to these old Ming cannons. Then, he asked several old Ming cannons to try it out. However, before testing the cannon, Jacob repeatedly emphasized that it was not allowed to overload the gun. Even Jacob took out a wooden spoon and stipulated that only 3 spoons of gunpowder could be loaded. Moreover, when loading the gun, the powder was not allowed to peek out, but could only be flush with the edge of the wooden spoon. This was actually Marin's idea. As a liberal arts student who was familiar with history, Marin knew very well what kind of morals the artillerymen and musketeers of the Ming dynasty were. For these uneducated ancient artillerymen and musketeers, charging was purely based on feelings. How much to load depends on whether the hands shake when loading. Therefore, it is best to equip them with containers for measuring gunpowder powder and strictly regulate the amount to control the amount of charge. This idea was personally experienced by Marin in his previous life. Of course, it was not the experience of firing cannons, but the experience of cooking. Marin's cooking skills were very poor at the beginning of his previous life, mainly because he had poor control over the addition of salt and sugar. Often, his hands shook, and he added too much salt or too much sugar. Later, he went to the supermarket and bought a very small spoon to measure the seasoning. For example, for a pot of food, add 2 spoons of salt and 3 spoons of sugar. After repeated practice, Marin never had the problem of adding too much salt when cooking. And this method is the best way to restrain ancient artillerymen and musketeers. To this end, Marin asked carpenters to make special wooden spoons. Artillerymen use large wooden spoons and charge 3 spoons of powder. Musketeers use small wooden spoons and charge 1 small spoon of powder. In this way, the amount of powder can be controlled. Of course, the musketeers in the late Ming dynasty deliberately charged less powder, and they can't be blamed. Because the musketeers made by the Ministry of Industry of the Ming dynasty are so damn rubbish. If the gun is filled with enough medicine as required, it is easy to explode the barrel and kill the musketeer himself. Therefore, the musketeers in the late Ming dynasty were forced to charge less powder. However, in this way, the musketeers really became bird guns, which can only kill birds but not people. For this reason, Marin intends to help Daming introduce a system of engraving names on gun barrels. That is, for each gun barrel, the craftsman who makes it must engrave his name and work number. Once the barrel explodes in the future, the relevant responsible person will be found according to the name and work number, and then severely punished. In this way, those craftsmen will not dare to deal with it casually. Of course, if it is a problem with iron materials, it can also be traced back through the craftsman to the officials responsible for supplying iron materials. After all, if there is a problem with the raw materials, then that batch of gun barrels will have problems. It is through this strict system of accountability that Europe effectively controls the quality of gun barrels and avoids the sorrow of the musketeers in the late Ming dynasty. It only took an hour. Because of the strict specifications and the fact that the artillerymen themselves were veterans with a good foundation, the 5 old artillerymen of the Ming dynasty quickly mastered how to operate the François cannon. Then, with the assistance of their apprentices, the 5 old artillerymen of the Ming dynasty began to fire their own cannons. Boom boom boom. After a few shots, the officials and soldiers of the Ming dynasty present were surprised to find that all the 5 old gunners hit the target 100 steps away. So weird. Let's try a few more times. The Right Governor Lu Meng said in surprise. Then, the 5 old gunners fired a few more shots. As a result, the 5 old gunners fired a total of 25 rounds in 5 rounds, and only one shot missed the target. The Ming officials and soldiers present were all extremely shocked. What shocked them was not only the high hit rate of this artillery, but also its firing rate, which stunned the experts present. Because, experts such as Lu Meng were shocked to find that these old gunners fired 5 shots in 50 breaths, an average of 1 shot every 10 breaths. What a speed! The experts present were simply stunned. You know, the Ming dynasty's native cannons, each time they fired, it took an average of about 120 breaths, that is, 2 minutes, to fire a shot. And this kind of Fran machine gun can reach 1 shot every 10 breaths, which is simply too terrifying. Of course. This is not calculated in this way. According to Kong Tai's explanation, this is because all 5 subguns are loaded before they can be fired in 1 breath. Counting the loading time of the subgun, it is not that fast. Moreover, according to the rules of gun operation, after each round of 5 subguns are fired, the artillery must use a wet sponge to fully cool the gun body and subgun to prevent the gun barrel from overheating and causing the barrel to explode. Afterwards, a dry sponge must be used to absorb water and dry it again. In this way, in fact, the Fran machine gun only fires about 3 or 4 shots per minute on average. That is, 1 shot is fired every 20 breaths. Despite this, Lu Meng, Xu Yong and other knowledgeable Ming officials were still stunned by this firing rate. Because this firing rate is 6 times that of the Ming earth cannon. Moreover, after testing, this kind of French cannon can indeed hit 200 steps, 300 meters, which is twice the distance of the Ming earth cannon. Note, the 300 meters here is the effective range, not including the terminal range without killing. If the full range is calculated, it should be farther. As for the historical record of the French cannon's range of 2,000 feet, that is, 666.7 meters, it should be the total range, including the terminal range after the effective range. Because most Ming civil officials do not understand artillery, when recording the range, they only use the total range, not the effective range. Such a sharp artillery, I will definitely recommend it to the court. Lu Meng shouted excitedly. In the words of the later online literary world, it means, I will help you get on the strong recommendation list. Chapter 753, The Matchlock Gun is also powerful. Although the hit rate had dropped to about 50% when shooting at a target at a distance of 200 steps, 300 meters, the knowledgeable officials and soldiers of the Ming dynasty were still shocked. The Ming dynasty had strict control over firearms. Why was the control strict? Because the Ming court regarded firearms as strategic weapons and attached great importance to the issue of firearms. Therefore, in the Ming dynasty, as long as they were civil officials who understood military affairs, they would not ignore firearms. Therefore, when the Ming army was suppressed by the later Jin army in the late Ming dynasty, many officials placed their hopes on the red cannons introduced from the West, advocating the idea that cannons are the truth. For this reason, they were also severely blackmailed by the Portuguese. An 18-pound cast iron cannon cast in England cost no more than 100 taels of silver, but it was sold at an extremely high price of 1,000 taels per cannon by the black-hearted Portuguese merchants. And the Ming court actually admitted it and was willing to be the victim. In fact, the French cannon is more suitable for land battle artillery than the red cannon to attack the enemy. However, at that time, because the Ming dynasty artillery had no movable gun carriage, the French cannon was also difficult to transport. In addition, the Ming dynasty Ministry of Industry also made shoddy products for the French cannon, resulting in poor fit between the subgun and the mother gun, and serious air leakage, which made the French cannon unusable. In Marin's view, the French cannon with an effective range of 300 meters is more suitable for serving as an infantry cannon in front of the formation because of its fast firing rate. Because before the enemy's cavalry rushes to our formation, as many cannons as possible. Shooting all 5 subguns in one breath will definitely cause great damage to the opponent. If the subgun is loaded with shotgun shells, the damage will be even more fierce. However, the Ming Dynasty artillery has never had a good movable gun carriage. The Tiger Squat cannon was placed on a chariot for shooting, but the Tiger Squat cannon was not powerful, with a range and a firing rate. It was a standard earth cannon, but it had made many contributions in the anti-Japanese war. Generally, the French cannon was mounted on the top of the city or on the fort, so it naturally could not play its advantages. The reason why the French cannon was replaced by the red cannon is that the red cannon with a longer range is obviously more suitable for the top of the city and the fort. The French cannon is actually best placed in front of the battlement. But the premise is that a modern gun carriage that is easy to transport and quickly deployed is needed. This time, when Marin presented the French cannon, he presented the entire cannon with the modern gun carriage to the Ming court. With the modern movable gun carriage, the French cannon will inevitably be moved to the battlefield in the future to bombard the enemy head-on. On the shooting range, Lu Meng, a knowledgeable civil servant, was not the only one who was excited. Many other civil officials who knew military affairs, including generals such as Xu Yong, also gradually saw the superiority of this new type of artillery: long range, great power, fast deployment and shooting speed. It is an absolute battlefield weapon. Just when the officials and soldiers of the Ming dynasty at the scene were all excited, Kong Tai coughed and said, "Lord Shen, Lord Lu, General Su, my country still has muskets that have not been demonstrated." Lu Meng was shocked, and then said expectantly, "Ah, yes, I haven't seen the effect of the musket yet, Deputy Envoy Kong, please show it to me." Then, Xu Yong, the commander of the Guangzhou vanguard, immediately ordered his Qianhu to replace the artillery targets in the Qianhu shooting range with musket targets. However, the mainstream musket in the Ming dynasty is the three-eyed musket. The three-eyed musket is held with one hand. Generally, the musket holder holds the musket in the right hand and ignites the fuse with the left hand to fire the three-eyed musket. The three-barreled gun is three iron tubes tied to the front of the wooden handle. After the fuse is lit, it will fire 3 bursts. However, the reloading of the three-barreled gun is very troublesome and the speed is very slow. Therefore, after a round of shooting, the musketeer will hold the three-barreled gun and use it as a hammer to hit the approaching enemy. The head of the 3 gun barrels tied together is indeed very heavy. If it hits the enemy, it cannot kill the enemy immediately, but it can hurt the enemy. Therefore, the main function of the three-barreled gun in the Ming army is to give the opponent a 3-shot burst before the battle, and then the musketeer becomes a close combat hammer soldier. Moreover, the range of the three-barreled gun is very short, and the general best range is only 30 steps, about 45 meters. Within 30 steps, it can break the heavy cavalry and deal with the enemy's heavy armored cavalry. It is precisely because of the existence of the three-barreled gun that the Mongolian tribes in Mabe gradually abolished the heavy cavalry in the Ming dynasty and basically evolved into light cavalry. Why? Because the death cavalry of Genghis Khan's era is useless. In front of the three-eyed gun, the heavy armored death squad is also a gift. The reason why the Qing dynasty was able to win later was that they adopted cotton armor that was more suitable for resisting muskets. And the cotton armor technology was also learned from the Ming dynasty. And beyond 30 steps, the three-eyed gun can't hurt the enemy wearing heavy armor. But at 50 steps, it can still hurt the enemy who is not wearing armor at all. But generally, these unarmored enemies are cannon fodder soldiers. Using the three-eyed gun to hit them is also a waste of ammunition. In general, the power of the three-eyed gun is about the same as that of the short musket. Of course, the barrel length of the three-eyed gun is also very short. If the length of the wooden handle is not counted, the length of its barrel is about the same as that of the Western short musket, and the power is naturally similar. The barrel of the matchlock gun is more than 1 meter long. The longer the barrel, the faster the initial velocity of the bullet leaving the muzzle, and the longer the range, and the same is true for artillery. Therefore, the long-barreled matchlock gun brought by Marin is naturally much more powerful. According to the shooting habits of the three-barreled gun, the Guangzhou vanguard musketeers set the target 20 steps away. Note, although the armor-piercing killing distance of the three-barreled gun is 30 steps, it is convenient to aim within 20 steps. Within 20 to 30 steps, it may not necessarily hit the target even if you aim at this distance. The same is true for the matchlock gun, which can generally be aimed within 70 yards, 63.7 meters. However, the musket is a bit inaccurate outside the range of 50 meters. The extreme lobster soldier musketeers will withstand a wave of enemy shooting and only shoot within 30 meters. At this distance, even recruits can hit. Kong Tai saw it and disliked it was too close. So, he negotiated with Xu Yong and put the target at a distance of 30 steps. At a distance of 30 steps, are their muskets better than those of the Ming dynasty? The Ming officials who were watching were talking about it. However, when I saw the muskets that the musketeers of Beihai Kingdom took out, the barrels were much longer than the three-barreled gun barrels of the Ming dynasty. Long barrels are difficult to process, and gun barrels are different from cannon barrels. Cannon barrels are cast, and the walls are generally very thick. Gun barrels are generally forged, and the walls are very thin. However, to be honest, gun barrels with very thin walls are much more difficult to process than cannon barrels. The Ming dynasty had a bad tradition, treating craftsmen as slaves. Generally, craftsmen who were registered as artisan households basically became slaves of the court. Any insignificant civil servant could order those great craftsmen around. In fact, the Ming dynasty also inherited this tradition from the Yuan dynasty. The Mongol Yuan dynasty treated Han people as slaves, and artisan households were naturally no exception. The Ming dynasty also inherited this unreasonable system. Therefore, the status of artisan households in the Ming dynasty was low. Because there was no hope, even if there were inventions, the credit would be taken away by civil officials, so the level of Ming dynasty craftsmen stagnated, and in the late Ming dynasty, they were surpassed by the West. The reason why the short-barreled three-barreled guns were used in the early Ming dynasty was also related to the lack of technology to make long barrels. It was not until the Jiajing period that the Portuguese, in order to curry favor with the Ming dynasty, passed on the technology of making long barrels and the French cannon to the Ming dynasty. The distance of 30 steps was really not difficult for the musketeers sent by the Beihai Kingdom this time. You know, these people are sharpshooters specially selected by the Beihai Kingdom to show to the Ming dynasty. Therefore, their archery skills are all superb. With a burst of gunfire, the smoke gradually dissipated. After seeing that the Beihai Kingdom musketeers had put down their muskets, the musketeers of the Guangzhou Qianwei Qianhu of the Ming dynasty went to take back the gun targets and showed them to the two governors. After Shen Rui and Lu Meng looked at them, they were surprised to find that there were bullet holes on these gun targets. That is to say, in this round of shooting, all 15 musketeers who participated in the shooting hit the target. Moreover, the bullet holes made by most people were very close to the center of the target, and the results were quite good. Sure enough, good shooting skills. Lu Meng praised. You know, this is 30 steps away, which is 45 meters away. At 45 meters away, the gun target is already quite small in the field of vision. It is not bad to be able to hit the target, let alone the bullet hole is close to the center of the target. Therefore, the praise of Lu Meng, who knows the business, is not excessive at all. Shen Rui doesn't know much about firearms, but Lu Meng said it was good, so he stroked his beard and smiled with satisfaction. However, before the two big guys finished praising, Kong Tai asked again set another target at a distance of 40 steps. The officials and soldiers of the Ming dynasty present were all shocked, 40 steps away, but it was twice the distance that the Ming dynasty musketeers practiced shooting. Western firearms are so sharp. Soon, they knew the result. This round of shooting was much worse than the 30-step distance, but 15 people hit the target, but most of the bullet holes were not near the center point, but distributed on the edge of the target. However, Li Sanxue, the commander of the Guangzhou Qianwei Qianhu, was surprised. Can it penetrate the target at 40 steps? Why? Li Baihu, what's the matter with penetrating the target at 40 steps? Lu Meng asked with interest, not caring about Li Sanxue's rude behavior. Li Sanxue clasped his fists and bowed, and replied. My lord, the fire gun targets used by our Qianhu are made of harder beech wood. Moreover, this kind of target is very particular. If it can penetrate this kind of wooden target, it means that the bullet can also break heavy armor. Because this kind of beech wood target is made to imitate the protective power of heavy armor. If it can penetrate the target, it can break heavy armor. Then, how many steps can my Ming dynasty's three-barreled gun break heavy armor? Asked the layman Shen Rui. My lord, it's only 30 steps. Ah. Doesn't that mean that Beihai's muskets are better than Ming? Shen Rui said unhappily. I'm afraid that's the case. Li Sanxue was also a little depressed. As the leader of Ming's musket soldiers, he was also a little uncomfortable. After all, he used to be proud of being the commander of Ming's musket soldiers. At this time, Kong Tai, who had been silent, interrupted and said. My lords, General Su, the muskets produced by our Beihai kingdom have the ability to break heavy armor within 66 steps, 100 meters. However, it is difficult to guarantee a hit beyond 40 steps. 66 steps, very powerful, being able to guarantee a hit within 40 steps is also considered a sharp weapon among muskets. Lu Meng said thoughtfully. Kong Tai understood very well at this time. The Ming court was probably a little embarrassed. This was what Marin had told him before, the Ming must save face. So, he performed a Chinese ceremony and said. My two governors, General Su, our Beihai country is small and has few people, and the only thing we can show off is firearms. And our Grand Duke has long yearned for the prosperous and powerful Ming dynasty, and specially requested to be a vassal of the Ming dynasty. Your Highness once said, since ancient times, swords have been paired with heroes, and the Ming dynasty is rich and powerful, the best in the world. The sharp firearms of our Beihai country should also be presented to the powerful Ming dynasty to show our sincerity. After saying such a long line, Kong Tai couldn't help but flipping over the tribute book, tucked in his sleeves, which was full of Marin's shameless lines, instructing how to flatter the Ming dynasty. Kong Tai's words just now came from this book. This thing is very similar to the interview handbook that has been passed down in later generations. However, there are two kinds of handbooks, one is to know how to interview, and the other is to guide how to flatter. After all, Kong Tai's Chinese vocabulary is limited, and he can't organize too many shameless Chinese words to flatter. Therefore, before leaving, Ma Lin stuffed Kong Tai with a handbook, which is somewhat similar to Zhuge Liang's magic tricks. Hearing Kong Tai say this, Shen Rui and Lu Meng, the two governors, looked better. After all, it is indeed shameful to lag behind others in firearms. But the North Sea Kingdom's attitude is so low, which makes them feel much more comfortable. Lu Meng nodded and said to Kong Tai. Since Lord Ma Lin's surname was Ma, of course, his surname was Ma in his previous life, is so sincere, this official should play the Ming court and report Lord Ma's sincere heart to the emperor and the elders. In this way, I thank Lord Lu. After speaking, Kong Tai bowed to the ground to express his gratitude to Lu Meng. Chapter 754, Gun Tactics and Show of Strength. In his joy, Kong Tai suddenly remembered that it seemed that the advantages of the matchlock gun had not been fully demonstrated. So he asked to show the three-stage strike of the matchlock gun. What is the three-stage strike? The left governor Shen Rui asked in confusion. Obviously, he didn't know. But Lu Meng was excited. Could it be, the three-stage method of the King of Qianing, Muing? King of Qianing? Shen Rui couldn't remember which prince was called the King of Qianing for a moment. After all, the Mu family only called Muing the prince, and the younger generation inherited the title of Shiping Ho. It is the ancestor of the Mu family. Lu Meng said and pointed to the direction of Yunnan in the west, and Shen Rui suddenly realized. Kong Tai had been told by Ma Lin, so he naturally knew how to say it to make Daming happy. It was the three-stage strike invented by Prince Mu. Taoist Xia Yozi traveled to the west, taught my master to speak Chinese, helped my master improve the fire gun, and also taught my master the three-stage method of the King of Qianing. Then try it. Lu Meng said impatiently. In order to fully demonstrate the firepower, Kong Tai arranged 30 musketeers, lined up in 3 rows, and demonstrated three-stage shooting. But before shooting, these musketeers first placed a lot of chevaux de frise in front of the formation. Well, your army is indeed well versed in tactics and knows how to place chevaux de frise in front of the formation. Lu Meng stroked his beard and nodded in praise. There are many cavalry in the west, and almost every state has cavalry. If the enemy's cavalry rushes into the musketeer formation, they will definitely be slaughtered. Therefore, chevaux de frise must be placed in front of the musketeer formation. In addition, there will be spearmen to cover the flanks. If the enemy infantry rushes up, the musketeers will retreat into the formation, and the spearmen will come up to fight the enemy. Kong Tai introduced according to the instructions in the treasure book. Not only that, Kong Tai also asked people to take 20 spears down from the ship, and let the sailors stand on both sides of the musketeers with long hairs in their hands to protect them. Obviously, this was a demonstration of tactics for the Ming dynasty. However, the civil servants and soldiers of the Ming dynasty at the scene focused on the length of the spears. Oh, the hair of these foreign devils is so long. Some civil servants exclaimed. Of course they are long, these spears are about 4 meters long. Although they have been cut from 6 meters to 4 meters, they are still much longer than the spears of the Ming dynasty. The spears of the Ming dynasty are generally about 2 meters long, half shorter than these spears. But at this time, Xu Yong, the commander of the Guangzhou vanguard, said disdainfully, "With such a long spear, how can we move flexibly? If we meet a flexible opponent, we will definitely fail." According to the requirements of Chinese martial arts, the length of the spear is generally the same as the total length of the user's right hand raised after standing. In this way, it is more suitable to display the martial arts of the spear, which can be moved left and right and is extremely flexible. If it is too long, it will lose flexibility. Xu Yong obviously understands martial arts, so he is a little disdainful of the two long spears of the Beihai kingdom. But Kong Tai explained, "General Su, you are talking about generals who know martial arts. In fact, those who use spears in our country are all the lowest level infantry, who are not good at martial arts. They don't need one person to show his prowess, as long as they know how to stab people with spears." "What if the enemy dodges?" Xu Yong asked. "So you see, our spearmen are all close together. Countless spears are stabbed forward together, and there is no way to dodge left or right. In addition, the spears are so long, in fact, to deal with the charge of cavalry." "Deal with cavalry?" Lu Meng immediately became alert. "You know, throughout the Ming dynasty, the Mongolian cavalry in the northern frontier has always been the #1 worry of the Ming dynasty. When encountering in the wild, facing the charge of the Mongolian cavalry, the Ming army will be slaughtered 7 out of 10 times. If there is a way to restrain it, it will definitely be a blessing for the Ming dynasty." "Yes, Lord Lu." Kong Tai cleared his throat, and then quietly flipped through the treasure book given by Ma Lin. After a while, he introduced, "If facing a cavalry charge, the spearman can squat, insert the back end of the spear into the ground, and move forward diagonally. If the enemy cavalry charges hard, the 12-foot, 4-meter, long spear, even if it stands diagonally on the ground, the opposing cavalry must first load the spear when charging. Then, the warhorse will be stabbed and the enemy cavalry will fall off. The rest of our spearmen can stab the fallen enemy to death." Lu Meng gestured and found that if the spear was 4 meters long, he could really do this. Moreover, if the spears were inserted diagonally into the ground, even if the enemy cavalry collided with them, the force would be transmitted to the ground, and the infantry holding the spears would not be knocked away. But Xu Yong, the commander of the Guangzhou vanguard, interrupted. "But the Mongolian cavalry are good at horseback archery. They are shooting arrows from a long distance, how can we crack it?" Kong Tai was not in a hurry, because there was an explanation in Marin's treasure book. "General Su, have you forgotten our muskets? They have horse bows, and we have muskets. If you don't believe it, please see its power." Then, with an order, 30 musketeers were divided into 3 groups and began to perform 3-stage shooting. At this time, the target at 40 steps had not been removed and was put back in place. The archers performing the 3-stage shooting began to line up and shoot. Bang 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 dash. After the 10 musketeers in the first row aimed, they poured bullets at the target in front of them at the commander's order. Then, the first row of musketeers retreated sideways from the 1-meter wide interval to the end. The second row of musketeers went to the front. After they stood in position, the smoke from the first row of musketeers shooting had mostly dissipated, and they could roughly see the front. Then, the commander loudly ordered to fire, and the musketeers in the second row also pulled the trigger, driving the matchlock into the medicine pool, igniting the musket. Just as the second row went forward to shoot, the musketeers in the first row had already reached the back and started loading ammunition. When the second row retreated, they were still loading. But when the third row went forward to shoot and retreated, the musketeers in the first row had also roughly loaded. After a few breaths, the first row finally loaded, walked to the front, raised the matchlock, and started a new round of shooting at the command of the officer. In this way, the 3 rows of musketeers performed a relatively coherent and smooth 3-stage attack, which dazzled the officials and soldiers of the Ming dynasty present. It is indeed worthy of the 3-stage attack invented by King Qianning, which is extremely sharp. Lu Meng exclaimed sincerely. "Well, all the credit goes to the Ming dynasty Qianning King Muing. Qianning King is sharp." The Ming dynasty civil officials present also praised. They would not praise foreign countries, but they would not hesitate to praise the famous generals of their own dynasty. In Guangdong, when praising someone for being powerful, they would say, so sharp. Even foreign officials such as Lu Meng were influenced. But at this time, Li Sanchue, the centurion in charge of the fire gun team of the entire Qian Husua, was puzzled. Lord Kong Tai, I see that your army only needs 30 breaths to load ammunition, while our army needs more than 60 breaths to load ammunition with a shorter gun barrel. Why? You know, it is very troublesome to put lead bullets into the gun barrel, and it takes a lot of effort. As a professional, Li Sanchue found that these Beihai musketeers seemed to be able to load lead bullets into the gun barrel easily. So easy, Li Sanchue suspected that these lead bullets were smaller than the inner diameter of the gun barrel. But, if that happens, it will leak, which will affect the range. But, the range of these Beihai Kingdom's muskets is so long. When Lu Meng heard the question from the professional Li Sanchue, he also looked over with concern. Kong Tai heard Li Sanchue's question and waved his hand. Then, an idle musketeer nearby came over with his matchlock. Kong Tai took out his matchlock and motioned the musketeer to bring the ammunition. After pouring in the gunpowder and tamping it with a cleaning rod, he took out a lead bullet from his briefcase. Captain Li, please look. Li Sanchue and Lu Meng stared at it, but saw Kong Tai take out another small piece of paper. The paper was shiny and looked like oil paper. Then, Kong Tai wrapped the lead bullet, which was smaller than the inner diameter of the gun barrel, with the oil paper, put it into the muzzle, and then easily pressed it to the bottom with the cleaning rod. Afterwards, Kong Tai explained. Li Baihu, the lead bullet in the barrel has the best chance of not holding its breath. Otherwise, it will affect the range. Therefore, 10 years ago, my master invented the method of wrapping a slightly smaller lead bullet with oil paper or deerskin and then pressing it into the barrel. In this way, it is much easier to press the lead bullet into the barrel. Look, I pressed the lead bullet to the bottom just now. Didn't it do it in one go? If you use a lead bullet that is exactly the size of the inner diameter of the barrel, it would be difficult to press it to the bottom. You have to use a hammer to press the rod to hit it hard, which is very time-consuming. The method of wrapping with oil paper or deerskin can save dozens of breaths of time and greatly speed up the loading speed. It is precisely because of this powerful invention of my master that the combat effectiveness of our country's musketeers has greatly increased. 10 years ago, my master's territory was less than the size of a county. But now, my master's territory is as large as half of Fu Jian. Kong Tai said proudly. A half of Jian. Lu Meng was shocked. He had been a counselor in Fujian, and knew that Fujian had 10 prefectures, 2 states, and 69 counties. If it was half the size of Fujian, wouldn't it be as big as more than 30 counties? You know, the fiefs of the princes of the Ming dynasty were not that big. It seems that this Beihai kingdom is still strong. Yes, our country is now divided into 8 provinces, East Frisia, West Frisia, Oldenburg, Bremen, Schleswig, Jutland, North Munster, and South Munster. Of course, our provinces are definitely not as big as those of the Ming dynasty. The 8 provinces added together are only half the size of Fujian. It's already very big. Lu Meng knew very well that this area was more than 10 times larger than the Ryukyu Islands, a vassal state of the Ming dynasty. He had also been in Fujian before, and the place where the Ryukyu kingdom paid tribute to the trade was in Fuzhou. Lu Meng had dealt with the Ryukyu people for this and knew the situation there. The Ryukyu kingdom was made a king by the imperial court, and the area of the North Sea kingdom was larger than the fiefs of the princes of the Ming dynasty. Of course, the territories of the vassal kings granted by Zhu Yuanzhang in the early Ming dynasty were excluded. Zhu Yuanzhang was very generous in granting fiefs to his sons, and gave them large areas of land. For example, the Qin Wang, Jin Wang, Qing Wang and Su Wang, the latter 2 had the largest fiefs, but they were very poor and belonged to the desolate northwest region. The territories of the later princes were much smaller, generally only 1 prefecture or 1 state. For example, the territory of Maolin is almost as large as 5 prefectures, far exceeding the territories of the princes of the Ming dynasty after the Zhu Yuanzhang period. It seems that this kind of musket and its tactics are very powerful. Shen Rui exclaimed. My lord is willing to offer all of these to the Ming dynasty court and become a vassal of the Ming dynasty. May the Ming dynasty be more prosperous. Good. Great good. Chapter 755. You need to go through the process, come back next year. Just when Shen Rui and Lu Meng were praising Ma Lin's loyalty to the Ming dynasty, Li Sanshui, the commander of the musket team of Qian Husua, suddenly asked. Deputy Envoy Kong, may I ask how the matchlock used in your army's muskets is made? I see that your army's matchlock burns slowly and steadily. I wonder why. Li Sanshui's question was very professional. Generally, ropes, such as cotton threads, once ignited, either burn quickly or go out after a while. It is indeed rare for a matchlock gun to burn slowly and steadily. However, this is very suitable for the application of muskets. If the matchlock burns too quickly, it is estimated that carrying a sack of matchlocks will not be enough to support a battle. Kong Tai naturally knew the principle. After all, he was responsible for presenting the matchlock gun. So, he explained. These tinderboxes are made of several strands of fine flax ropes. Then, put them in a pot and boil them with vinegar. Or, soak them in saltpeter water. However, the tinderbox soaked in saltpeter water burns a little fast. Therefore, it is better to boil it with vinegar. But if you think the tinderbox burns too slowly, you can also soak it in diluted saltpeter water. Remember, the saltpeter water should not be too concentrated, otherwise the tinderbox will burn too fast. Vinegar is more expensive in Europe. Because the vinegar in Europe is apple vinegar brewed from apples, which is naturally delicate. But in the Ming dynasty, vinegar is brewed from glutinous rice, which is cheaper and easier to get. Li Sanshui quickly found paper and pen and wrote down the method of making tinderboxes for future use. But when Li Sanshui asked how to cast the Franco machine cannon and how to make a matchlock gun, Kong Tai did not say much. After all, Kong Tai came to seek the qualification to pay tribute. You haven't allowed me to pay tribute yet, and I tell you everything. Isn't this a fool? Therefore, regarding the technology of casting cannons and making matchlock guns, Kong Tai evaded the question by saying that he was not a blacksmith and did not know much about the methods. However, if the North Sea Kingdom became a vassal of the Ming dynasty, the Lord Marin would definitely send a group of craftsmen to the Ming dynasty to instruct the Ministry of Industry on how to cast sophisticated French cannons and matchlock guns. Kong Tai's explanation was reasonable. Generally speaking, how could a diplomat be proficient in casting cannons and making guns? Therefore, no one could find fault with this statement. In the next few days, Kong Tai and Skanda stayed in the Qianhu office specifically, accompanying the artillery commander Jacob and another musketeer commander named Wizet to train a group of elite gunners and musketeers selected by the Guangzhou vanguard. After all, Kong Tai and his men must leave. Even if they give the French cannons and matchlock guns to the Ming dynasty, someone must know how to use them, right? Seeing that the people of the North Sea Kingdom are so concerned about training the Ming soldiers, Shen Rui and Lu Meng, the two chief officers in charge of the affairs, are also very happy. During this period, the newly appointed Guangdong governor Chen Jin also came to visit the rare blonde and blue-eyed foreign devils. Seeing that Kong Tai and others were doing their best to help the Ming army train gunners and musketeers, he also encouraged them. Moreover, Chen Jin also held the title of Governor-General of Guangdong and Guangxi, and was usually stationed in Wuzhou, Guangxi, responsible for suppressing the Yao rebellion. After seeing the power of the French cannon and the matchlock gun, Chen Jin was eager to allocate the 40 French cannons and the 500 matchlock guns presented by Marin to his official army to suppress the Yao uprising. But unfortunately, because Beihai Kingdom has not officially become a vassal of the Ming dynasty, these guns and cannons are not strictly speaking the Ming dynasty. In addition, even if these guns and cannons belong to the Ming dynasty, as tribute, they must first be sent to the Ministry of Rights, and only after the Ministry of Rights is responsible for receiving them can they be considered the Ming dynasty. Then, they can be distributed. However, Chen Jin knew that after the weapons such as the Portuguese cannon and the matchlock gun were sent to the capital, they would definitely be supplied to the frontier troops on the northern Great Wall first line, and would not be supplied to the second and third line troops under the Governor-General of Guangdong and Guangxi. Because the military focus of the Ming dynasty was on the northern Great Wall first line. Defending against Mongolia was the military focus of the Ming dynasty. It was not a big deal to quell the Yao uprising. Therefore, when leaving the Qian Husua, Chen Jin, as the Governor-General of Guangdong and Guangxi and the Governor of Guangdong, looked at the 40 Portuguese cannons and 500 matchlock guns, and he was reluctant to leave. Governor-General Chen thought to himself it would be great if the official army that quelled the Yao uprising was equipped with such weapons. Seeing the look in Governor-General Chen's eyes, Kong Tai, who was originally smart, didn't know how to react. So Kong Tai hurried back to Guangzhou City and found Columbus. What did he find Columbus for? Of course, it was the batch of guns and cannons that Columbus had embezzled. Before, Marin had planned to give the Kingdom of Malacca 20 flannel cannons and 200 matchlock guns. However, Columbus was greedy and took the initiative to embezzle half of them, and only gave 10 flannel cannons and 100 matchlock guns to the Kingdom of Malacca. As a deputy envoy, Kong Tai couldn't say anything to Columbus, the nominal envoy and the baron. However, seeing that the Governor-General of Guangdong and Guangxi, Chen Jin, particularly liked these guns and cannons, Kong Tai decided to take out the 10 flannel cannons and 100 matchlock guns that Columbus had embezzled and give them to Chen Jin. After hearing Kong Tai's idea, Columbus was still angry at first and refused to hand them over. But Kong Tai threatened to complain after returning home, and Columbus had to give in. After all, he also knew that Kong Tai could become a deputy envoy at a young age, and he was definitely a popular person in front of Marin. Therefore, the 10 Portuguese cannons and 100 matchlocks that Columbus had embezzled were all given by Kong Tai to Chen Jin, the governor of Guangdong and Guangxi. This. How can I be so embarrassed? Governor Chen felt a little embarrassed when he saw that Kong Tai was so discerning. However, he liked Portuguese cannons and matchlocks very much, and he also wanted to quell the Yao uprising as soon as possible. So, he accepted them reluctantly. After the artillerymen and musketeers in Guangzhou received training on their use, Chen Jin, the governor of Guangdong and Guangxi, could not wait to select half of them from this group of people, and sent them to Wuzhou, the governor-general's residence of Guangdong and Guangxi, along with the 10 Portuguese cannons and 100 matchlocks that Kong Tai gave him, to be used on the front line of suppressing the Yao people in Guangxi. However, a very bad news came from the Guangdong Provincial Administration Office. It might be difficult for Beihai Kingdom to obtain the tribute of the Ming dynasty. Why? Because according to the inquiry of Ding Haishan, the director of Guangzhou Maritime Customs, officials and merchants from vassal states such as Kampa, southern Vietnam, Siam, Thailand, Malacca, and even merchants from Ceylon and Dashi came to Guangzhou Maritime Customs for tribute trade. As a result, none of them knew about Beihai Kingdom. This is a big problem. You know, there are two ways for the Ming dynasty to confirm the existence of vassal states. One is to directly send a small official from the Ministry of Rights to the country to investigate and confirm its existence. The other is because the vassal state is too far away from the Ming dynasty, it is inconvenient to send people to conduct on-site inspections. At this time, the original vassal state is needed to help prove the existence of the country. However, Beihai Kingdom is a small country in the northwest of the European continent. The countries that come to Guangzhou, Daming, for trade are basically small countries in Southeast Asia. Even if there are occasional people from India and Arabia, they have indeed never heard of Beihai Kingdom. Because, how long has the Grand Duchy of Beihai been established? The reputation has not yet spread to the Arab region. So, this is embarrassing. Although Shen Rui and Lu Meng have a good impression of the Beihai Kingdom delegation, they do not have the right to determine the trading qualifications of Beihai Kingdom. If there were officials or merchants from the original vassal states who could prove the existence of the Beihai Kingdom, they could make an impromptu decision according to the regulations. But no one had ever heard of the Beihai Kingdom. So, the two of them had no choice. For now, the two governors could only submit a petition to the court, leaving the Ministry of Rights and the cabinet to worry about it. Kong Tai asked Lu Meng in frustration. Master Lu, how long will it take for the court to approve it? Lu Meng said depressedly. I don't know, this is the process that the court must go through. Time. Maybe it will take a long time. Come back next year. Ah. So long. Kong Tai opened his mouth in surprise. But soon, he began to admire Marin's ingenuity. Why? Marin had predicted before he came with the nature of the Ming officialdom. It is estimated that there will be a long argument to review the tribute qualifications of Beihai Kingdom. Maybe it will take a year or two to quarrel and argue. Anyway, it's just procrastination. This phenomenon is not uncommon even in later generations. Fortunately, Marin has been mentally prepared, otherwise he must be depressed to death. However, what Kong Tai is most concerned about now is whether the Beihai Kingdom delegation can purchase Ming dynasty goods in Guangzhou this time. Shenrui and Lu Meng, the two governors, are also in a difficult situation, because, without obtaining the tribute trade, according to the rules, Beihai Kingdom is not allowed to purchase goods in Guangzhou. Moreover, Shen and Lu have no right to make a decision. Chapter 756, Crazy Shopping, Part 1. Just when the two governors were in a dilemma, Kong Tai's previous gift of Portuguese cannons and matchlock guns to Chen Jin had a miraculous effect. Chen Jin, the Governor-General of Guangdong and Guangxi and the Governor of Guangdong, took action. The Guangdong Provincial Administration Office only had the right to manage Guangdong's finances, taxes and civil affairs. It had no right to decide whether to approve Beihai's purchases in Guangzhou. However, the Governor-General of Guangdong and Guangxi could. As the Governor-General of Guangdong and Guangxi in the Ming Dynasty, although Chen Jin did not directly manage local government affairs. But because he was an imperial envoy sent by the court, the governor of the Ming Dynasty was not a permanent local official, but was equivalent to an imperial envoy and generally also held the position of the right censor. Moreover, the Governor-General of Guangdong and Guangxi in the Ming Dynasty was mainly responsible for suppressing the uprising of the mountain people in Guangxi, and the governor's office was generally located in Wuzhou, Guangxi. He represented the emperor. Therefore, Chen Jin could make decisions on the spot on some difficult matters that were difficult to handle. Of course, this immediate decision-making imperial envoy's right could not grant Beihai the qualification to pay tribute. Because, making decisions on the spot can only be used to temporarily deal with some difficult problems, but it cannot form a routine. In other words, this right is one-time, without continuity, and cannot be used as a reference for dealing with similar problems later. However, for the Beihai Kingdom delegation, it is not necessary to obtain the qualification for tribute trade all at once. What Kong Tai asked for was just to be able to obtain the qualification for purchasing in Guangzhou this time. Chen Jin had just accepted Kong Tai's gift and was considering how to repay him. Kong Tai came to ask for it. After repeated consideration, Chen Jin decided to use the governor's imperial power to temporarily grant Kong Tai and his party the right to purchase in Guangzhou. Of course, Kong Tai and others purchased in Guangzhou not in the name of a tributary country, but in the name of cooperative merchants in the camp of the Governor-General of Guangdong and Guangxi. The Governor-General of Guangdong and Guangxi, Chen Jin, issued an official document stating that he met the overseas barbarian merchant, Kong Tai through an intermediary, and purchased 10 Portuguese cannons and 100 matchlock guns from him at a price of 2,000 taels of silver to quell the Yao rebellion. In addition, Governor-General Chen Jin, in the name of the imperial envoy, granted Kong Tai and his party the right to purchase once in Guangzhou as a reward and gift for this gun and cannon transaction. In fact, Chen Jin received 10 Portuguese cannons and 100 matchlock guns this time without paying a penny. However, in the official documents, the Governor-General of Guangdong and Guangxi expended 2,000 taels of silver. Needless to say, these 2,000 taels of silver naturally went into Mr. Chen's pocket. You know, before trading with the West, silver was still very rare in the Ming Dynasty. 2,000 taels of silver is definitely an astronomical figure. How to say it, in this era, the annual salary of the 7th-rank county magistrate of the Ming Dynasty was 45 taels of silver. 2,000 taels of silver is equivalent to the salary of the county magistrate of the Ming Dynasty for 44 years. Moreover, the Ming Dynasty could buy a diploma with money. During the Jingtai period, civilians, as long as they were not lowly registered, such as merchants, craftsmen, and musicians, could donate 800 shur of rice to buy a place in the Imperial Academy. During the Chenghua period, the time when the father of the recently deceased Emperor Hongzhi was in power, it only took 100 dan of rice to donate to become a student. And how much is 100 dan of rice worth? Only 50 taels of silver. But what can students do after graduation? Although it is not the official path of the imperial examination, they cannot be granted an official position such as county magistrate. However, they can be granted the position of assistant to the prefecture and county. And what is the position of assistant to the prefecture and county? Generally, they are adjutants such as the prefectural magistrate, the county magistrate, and the chief clerk. Put it now, it is equivalent to a big shot at the level of deputy county magistrate. Moreover, if you do a good job, you may have the opportunity to be promoted to county magistrate. 50 taels of silver can buy a diploma that can be used to become a deputy county magistrate. The gold content of this diploma is far less than that of Huaqing University and Peking University. And 2,000 taels of silver can buy 40 diplomas for deputy county magistrates during the Qinghua period. This is absolutely a huge sum of money. Of course, I won't mention the late Ming dynasty. Because the silver produced by the super-large silver mines in Mexico and Peru in America and the Iwami silver mine in Japan flowed into the Ming dynasty every year, silver was flooded in the late Ming dynasty. As a result, the family property of the cabinet bosses in the late Ming dynasty generally started with hundreds of thousands of taels of silver. For example, Zhang Juzheng was relatively honest. After his death, Wanli liquidated and confiscated his property, and seized 20,000 taels of gold and more than 100,000 taels of silver. This is just cash, not including the land purchased with silver, those are the big ones. But that was the late Ming dynasty. As far as this era is concerned, silver is still very valuable in the Ming dynasty because the massive silver from America and Japan has not yet been obtained. Generally speaking, ministers with wealth of more than 10,000 taels of silver are definitely rich. And Chen Jin made a lot of money by getting 2,000 taels of silver through this operation. It was also Kong Tai's luck. If he were the governor of Guangdong and Guangxi in the Qing dynasty, although he had more real power, he was already a permanent local official, no longer the emperor's imperial envoy, so he did not have the right to make decisions on the spot. Therefore, Chen Jin made it very convenient for the Beihai Kingdom delegation. Not only that, Chen Jin also sent several runners from the governor's office to assist Kong Tai in going out to purchase. It was called surveillance, but it was actually to help. Chen Jin got 10 Portuguese cannons and 100 matchlock guns for free, and also took the opportunity to make 2,000 taels of silver, so he was naturally very respectful. If Kong Tai were to go to purchase by himself, as a foreigner, he would not be like the foreigners in later generations who were masters in China, but would be looked down upon by the arrogant merchants of the Ming dynasty. Maybe, the goods sold to others for 1 or 2 taels of silver dare to be offered to you at a high price of 5 taels. However, with the help of the runners of the governor's office, those merchants dared not mess around. At least, they dared not ask for a random price. After getting this convenience, Conti and Skanda, 2 people who knew Chinese, started a crazy purchase in Guangzhou with the assistance of the governor's office servants. Conti first purchased the seeds of tung trees and lacquer trees. The products of these 2 trees are definitely strategic materials for the North Sea Kingdom, which is engaged in great navigation. Why? Tung oil squeezed from the fruit of tung trees is a material urgently needed for shipbuilding. At present, the shipbuilding industry in Europe uses olive oil and linseed oil to process wood. However, the effect of their processing wood is far inferior to tung oil, and the cost is still very high. After Marin owned America, he actually had no shortage of wood for shipbuilding, and shipbuilding craftsmen were also being trained in large numbers. However, the oil necessary for shipbuilding was in urgent need. Moreover, after being treated with tung oil, the wood is not only waterproof, but also has greatly improved anti-corrosion ability. For wooden shipbuilding, tung oil is definitely the best choice among oils. Similarly, lacquer trees also play a significant role in shipbuilding. If tung oil and lacquer produced by lacquer trees are mixed together, the waterproof and anti-corrosion effects of ships will be better. But unfortunately, there are no tung oil trees, no lacquer trees in Europe, and no lacquer trees in America. These 2 plants are only found in China and nearby countries. At present, the paints used in Europe are all mixtures of various precious raw materials, which are very expensive and extremely expensive. Therefore, the reason why Marin is in a hurry to open up the Ming dynasty trade route is not necessarily because he pays much attention to the mainstay of trade, silk and porcelain, but rather pays special attention to the introduction of tung oil and lacquer trees. Only with a large amount of low-cost tung oil and raw lacquer can Marin mass-produce ships at low cost in America, forming a sea of ships and killing all maritime competitors. It just so happens that the southern part of North America is also a subtropical region, which is very similar to the climate in southern China where tung oil and lacquer trees grow, and can be planted on a large scale. The prerequisite is that you have to have seeds. In order to purchase enough tung oil seeds and lacquer tree seeds, Kong Tai directly put up a big sign, purchasing large quantities of tung oil seeds and lacquer tree seeds at high prices. The purchase price is 1 tael of silver per caddy of seeds. This news directly stunned the merchants in Guangzhou. Damn, 1 tael of silver per caddy. You know, in the Ming dynasty, a stone of rice weighed more than 100 caddies, and the price was only half a tael of silver. And this guy bought tung oil seeds, and offered 1 tael of silver for 1 caddy, which was really a big ripoff. So many people began to look for tung oil seeds and lacquer tree seeds in a hurry to exchange for big money. At the same time, Kong Tai also raised a banner to buy bamboo seeds. This immediately shocked the Ming dynasty people in Guangzhou. Nima, bamboo is a thing, and there are people buying its seeds. Isn't it everywhere? When it rains in spring, bamboo shoots can sometimes grow tall overnight. But when everyone went to find bamboo seeds, they encountered a problem. Bamboo generally blooms and bears fruit once in its lifetime, and the cycle is several decades. So, even if bamboo is everywhere, it is very difficult to find bamboo seeds. Because bamboo generally blooms once every 60 years and then produces seeds. Once it blooms and produces seeds, the bamboo body may wither and die. Therefore, bamboo shoots are easy to find, but bamboo seeds are really hard to find. Kong Tai raised the purchase price of bamboo seeds to 10 taels of silver per caddy, but he didn't receive any. Unlike tung oil seeds and lacquer tree seeds, at least he collected several hundred caddies of each. Finally, after offering a high reward and making inquiries from many sources, Kong Tai learned that there was a hermit in a bamboo forest in the north of Guangzhou. Because he loved bamboo, he collected several caddies of bamboo seeds by chance. But when Kong Tai personally went to the door to buy bamboo seeds, he was turned away. It turned out that the hermit himself was indifferent to fame and fortune and did not love money. Moreover, the old man treasured bamboo very much. The old man ignored the high price of 10 taels of silver per caddy offered by Kong Tai. Even though Kong Tai offered a sky-high price of 20 taels of silver per caddy, the old man did not give in. But the irony is that although the old man is indifferent to fame and fortune, his son is not. In the end, the old man's 2 sons worked together to deceive the old man, and then stole the old man's precious 5 caddies of bamboo seeds, and sold them to Kong Tai for 100 taels. Then, the 2 divided the 100 taels, each of them got 50 taels, and each bought 10 acres of land, which was considered to be a stable and prosperous farming life. Before that, the old man's 2 sons each had only 5 acres of land, and their lives were very difficult. Kong Tai didn't care where the bamboo seeds came from. After getting the bamboo seeds, he immediately rushed back to Guangzhou city to prevent the old man from rushing back and regretting. Why did Marin buy bamboo seeds? Because Marin wanted to make concrete. If he made reinforced concrete, the cost of steel production in this era was too high. Marin had built an artificial reservoir before, and because of the large amount of reinforced concrete, it cost hundreds of thousands of gold coins. Then, Marin didn't dare to make reinforced concrete casually. Because the cost is too high. Unless it is the walls of the royal palace and the capital, Marin is reluctant to use reinforced concrete in general places. So, Marin thought of a compromise product that was popular in later generations: bamboo reinforced concrete. Bamboo is low cost and easy to handle. But the biggest problem is that there is no bamboo in Europe and America. There may be native bamboo in America, but in terms of growth speed, no bamboo can catch up with bamboo. Bamboo grows fast and can grow into building materials in 2 or 3 years. Moreover, bamboo is very fast. Plant a bamboo. As long as the climate is suitable, in a few years, it may become a bamboo forest here. So Marin asked Kong Tai to buy bamboo seeds at a high price in Guangzhou. With seeds, spread them in America, maybe in a few years, there will be a large bamboo forest there. Although bamboo reinforced concrete is not as strong and durable as reinforced concrete, it can be used. Some civilian facilities, such as dams, can be built with bamboo reinforced concrete. Even the small earth cannons of this era may not be able to blast open bamboo reinforced concrete fortifications. If, before making concrete, the bamboo is treated with tung oil and raw lacquer to enhance its anti-corrosion ability, perhaps the bamboo reinforced concrete building can be used for dozens or hundreds of years. In fact, the reproduction method of bamboo does not only require seeds. Intact bamboo shoots and even some bamboo roots are fine. But there is a problem: bamboo grows too fast. If bamboo shoots and roots are carried, it will take Columbus's fleet about a year to return, as bamboo sometimes grows 1 or 2 meters overnight. The space on the ship is originally small, so how can it accommodate the crazy growth of bamboo? Therefore, it is more convenient to carry bamboo seeds back. After all, bamboo seeds will not continue to grow if they are not planted. However, it is too rare for bamboo to bloom and bear seeds once every. Chapter 757 Crazy Shopping, Part 2. While Kong Tai was buying up seeds of tung oil, lacquer and bamboo, another deputy envoy, Sekengda, who knew Chinese, was also busy. Although he was not in charge of contacting officials of the Ming dynasty because of his inferior ability to Kong Tai, Sekengda's Chinese level was still sufficient. With the help of the Yamen runners of the Governor-General's office of Guangdong and Guangxi, Sekengda was also responsible for some procurement business. The first procurement business that Sekengda was responsible for was wheat. Marin had long known that the wheat varieties of the Ming dynasty were better than the current European varieties. Of course, it's not about how delicious it is, but the growth rate. European wheat is too bad and takes a whole year to grow. The winter wheat of the Ming dynasty is rotated with rice, which usually takes only about half a year. Therefore, what Marin values is the growth rate of wheat in the Ming dynasty. In the future, Marin plans to implement a rice-wheat rotation system in the subtropical climate zone in southern North America, just like the Yangtze River basin of the Ming dynasty. In this way, the grain output will be even more terrifying and can feed more residents. However, in this era, wheat is not grown in Guangdong. Even in later times, only the mountainous areas in northern Guangdong planted a small amount of winter wheat. After all, the Guangdong and Guangxi regions mainly planted rice. Therefore, it was a bit troublesome to get wheat seeds in Guangzhou. However, fortunately, the Ming dynasty was a country with developed commerce. Because the officials of the Ming dynasty moved around the country, it was inevitable that a large number of officials from the north were transferred to the Guangdong and Guangxi regions to serve as officials. And northerners are used to eating pasta, so a market demand was formed. Moreover, although the quantity of this demand may not be large, it is very important. Because the ones who need wheat are the officials transferred from the north. If it is the common people, no one will care even if they have a demand. Nima, you have to eat rice in the south. Want to eat pasta? Get out of the way. But those masters can't be treated like this. They have to have what they want. In particular, those merchants who need to curry favor with those masters will also think of ways to transport flour or wheat from the north. Therefore, after Skanda and Conti separated, they immediately went to the grain shop in Guangzhou City to inquire if there was any wheat for sale. Moreover, he focused on inquiring about winter wheat produced in the Yangtze River basin. However, after all, this is Guangzhou, and there are too few wheat for sale here. Those grain shops, even if they cater to the needs of northern customers, generally sell flour instead of wheat. Many grain shops simply import flour instead of wheat to grind. Therefore, for several days in a row, Sekengda had no harvest. Finally, with the help of Shenrui, the left governor from Ganshi, Sekengda found a small official who was used to eating noodles and was from the northern part of Nanzili, roughly equivalent to the area north of the Huaihe River in the later Anhui region. The Nanzili in the Ming dynasty included the later Jiangsu province and Anhui province, and spent 20 taels of silver to buy 2 stones of winter wheat that he brought from his hometown that had not been ground into flour. Although the amount was a little small, it was still considered to be there. Sekengda's second task was to purchase rice seeds. Of course, it was not the indica rice popular in the southern tropical region, but the japonica rice popular in the northern region. For example, rice like northeast rice. In his previous life, Ma Lin was from Jiangbei, and was used to eating soft and sticky japonica rice, and was not used to eating indica rice from the south. Although there is also fragrant rice among indica rice. But in general, japonica rice is more fragrant and soft. Moreover, whether in the Ming dynasty or in later generations, northerners are more accustomed to eating japonica rice rather than indica rice. Even the southern Jiangsu region, which is the granary of the Ming dynasty, mainly produces japonica rice. This is because the Suhu area is an important rice supply area for the capital. Through the Beijing-Hangzhou Grand Canal, the grain boats transported rice from the Suhu area to the capital to supply officials in the capital. However, many officials in the capital are more accustomed to eating japonica rice. Therefore, the most important grain-producing area of the Ming dynasty also mainly grows japonica rice according to demand. In later generations, Su province is still the largest japonica rice producing area in the country. Including its Jiangnan region and Jianghuai region, it has always been an important japonica rice producing area. Of course, these are all false. The main reason is that Marin likes to eat japonica rice. So, as a younger brother, Sakengda must find japonica rice seeds for Marin. Then, transplant them to places with similar climates in North America and the Yangtze River Basin for planting and supply them to Marin. For this reason, Sakengda went to the grain store to purchase japonica rice seeds. It is not difficult to purchase japonica rice seeds. After all, japonica rice is very popular among officials from the north of the Yangtze River in the Ming Dynasty. Therefore, japonica rice is much easier to buy than wheat. Sakengda found a grain store and bought 100 stones of japonica rice. After purchasing japonica rice, Sakengda also bought a large number of indica rice seeds from Guangdong and Guangxi. After all, the tropical colonies controlled by Marin are not suitable for the growth of japonica rice, but only for the growth of indica rice. Before that, although Marin obtained indica rice seeds from India, he did not trust Asen's rice seeds, so he asked Sakengda to purchase some high-quality indica rice seeds in the Ming Dynasty. In addition, Sakengda also purchased a large number of glutinous rice seeds. The reason for this is that Marin plans to use glutinous rice to make vinegar in the future, and of course he can also make wine. In addition, he can also make rice cakes. In short, glutinous rice has a wide range of uses. Although glutinous rice cannot be used as a staple food, it has a wide range of uses. And making vinegar with glutinous rice is also one of the important uses. After all, the cost of making vinegar with apples is a bit high, so it is more cost-effective to make vinegar with glutinous rice. As for apples, it is better to eat them directly. After purchasing grain seeds, Sakengda finally started to purchase other things. Since he came to Daming, it would be unreasonable not to purchase silk. Therefore, Sakengda borrowed the power of the Governor-General's office of Guangdong and Guangxi and invited several major silk suppliers in Guangzhou City to purchase raw silk and some silk fabrics from them. The reason why raw silk is mainly purchased is because the aesthetics of the East and the West are different. The silk fabrics that the people of Daming think are beautiful may not be recognized by Europeans, and vice versa. Therefore, the best way to solve the aesthetic differences between the East and the West is to purchase raw silk from the Ming Dynasty and weave silk cloth that meets the aesthetic tastes of Europeans. At present, the price of raw silk in the Ming Dynasty is very cheap. On the market, a load of raw silk, a sima load, weighing about 120 catties, is only about 50 taels, and the average price of raw silk per catty is about 0.41 taels of silver, which is much cheaper than the price of 0.5 taels per catty of raw silk during the Wanli period. After all, during the Wanli period, the influx of silver caused the rise in prices. During the Zhengde period, silver had not yet flowed in large quantities. At this time, the price of goods in the Ming Dynasty was lower than that of the Wanli Dynasty. Sakengda proposed to purchase raw silk in large quantities, but the silk merchants in Guangzhou were not very happy. Why? Because they have their own sales channels. You can't sell the raw silk that was originally intended to be sold to old customers to him just because of Sakengda's words. But this is not a problem. When Sakengda proposed to purchase at a price of 56 taels per load of raw silk, those big silk merchants immediately abandoned their moral integrity. Except for a small number of customers with a larger background who must be supplied first, the priority of the rest of the customers was placed behind Skanda, who asked Skanda to increase the price by more than 10%. However, probably because Guangzhou City is far away from Jiangsu and Zhejiang, the main silk-producing areas, and there are no Europeans coming here to purchase in large quantities every year. Therefore, Guangzhou City has not yet formed a climate for large-scale silk supply. The silk purchased by Skanda actually robbed the locals of their share. Therefore, despite the high price, Skanda only purchased 900 dan of raw silk in total. Even so, it swept away all the raw silk in Guangzhou City, causing serious difficulties in the supply of raw silk in Guangzhou in the short term. Of course, this would never be possible if it were put in the late Ming Dynasty. Because, at the end of the Ming Dynasty, the supply of silk in the Ming Dynasty was quite sufficient. Even during the Jiajing period of the Ming Dynasty, due to economic considerations, Huzhou and other Jiangsu and Zhejiang regions saw a large-scale conversion of rice to mulberry. Because planting mulberry and raising silkworms and selling silk are much more profitable than selling rice. 1 stone of rice is only half a tael of silver, while a dan of raw silk costs dozens of taels. Before Westerners purchased silk from the Ming Dynasty, although planting mulberry and raising silkworms also had high returns. However, due to the limited market, no one was willing to convert rice to mulberry on a large scale. But since the Portuguese began to purchase silk in large quantities in the Ming dynasty, due to the stimulation of economic interests, the Jiangnan region began to convert rice to mulberry on a large scale. In this regard, a later TV series, The Ming Dynasty 1566, also described this situation in detail. However, as a top student in the history department, Marin naturally knew that the plot of The Ming Dynasty 1566, that Yen Song and his son vigorously promoted the conversion of rice to mulberry, and did not hesitate to destroy the dike and flood the fields to force it, was not in line with historical facts. In fact, what really promoted the conversion of rice to mulberry in the Jiangnan region was interest. And the executors were not Yen Song and his sons, but the Jiangnan gentry who owned large tracts of land. For example, super-large households such as the Songjiang Su family where Su Jia was located were the real pushers. The reason for doing so was naturally the huge profits from silk foreign trade. However, that happened later. Now, Columbus's fleet came to the Ming dynasty for the first time. The Ming dynasty had not seen huge profits from the silk trade, and naturally there was no trend of changing rice to mulberry. Therefore, the supply of silk was not very sufficient. If it were during the Chongzhen period, as long as you had money, you could still buy it freely in the Ming dynasty. Not to mention 900 dan of raw silk, you could buy 9,000 dan. Seeing that you couldn't buy enough raw silk, Skanda began to change your goal, starting to purchase porcelain. In this era, porcelain is very valuable in Europe. The price of a piece of porcelain is in gold coins. In many novels, when ancient European kings were angry, they liked to smash one or two precious porcelains to show that they were really angry. Otherwise, they would not be willing to throw away such precious porcelain. And this stock has appeared many times in many novels. So, Skanda would naturally not give up buying porcelain this time. For this reason, he hired a large number of porters to go to those porcelain shops to sweep the goods. After a few days, the warehouse of the post house where Skanda lived was filled with goods he bought from major porcelain shops in Guangzhou. Skanda not only bought a large number of exquisite porcelain bottles, porcelain jars and other decorative porcelain, but also a large number of porcelain bowls. Not to mention blue and white porcelain, ordinary celadone bowls were bought a lot. As a result, it was difficult for the people of Guangzhou to buy bowls. If someone accidentally broke a bowl, they couldn't buy a new one in a porcelain shop. In this way, with the efforts of the two envoys Conti and Skanda, a 500-ton warship and two 250-class armed merchant ships brought by Columbus were filled with various goods. And the crazy shopping behavior of the two people also seriously interfered with the market in Guangzhou. For example, the supply of the silk industry and the porcelain industry encountered serious difficulties. For this reason, many people complained to the government, which made the two governors a little headache. Fortunately, the crazy purchases of the two finally filled the cargo holds of the three ships, and they stopped buying goods. Otherwise, the situation would be even worse. Chapter 758, The Super Profitable Tea Brick Trade. Unlike the bustling trade scene in Sikandar, Kongtai was responsible for purchasing a small number of products in small quantities. However, they were all very important. However, Guangzhou was a trading port and was located in the lower plains of the Pearl River Delta. Therefore, rice was grown in the surrounding areas. Tung oil and lacquer trees were mostly produced in hilly and mountainous areas. In the plains, they were mostly reclaimed into rice fields and would not be wasted for growing trees, not to mention the surroundings of a big city like Guangzhou. Therefore, despite the high price, Kongtai's harvest was not very large. For example, he only purchased 500 kilograms of tung oil seeds, which basically swept away all the tung oil seed stocks in Guangzhou. And lacquer tree seeds were even less, he only purchased 300 kilograms, which also bought out all the lacquer tree seeds in Guangzhou. As for bamboo seeds, it was even worse. There were only 5 kilograms of seeds obtained from the bamboo forest in the north of the city. It's not that these seeds are scarce in the world, but that these seeds are relatively rare in plains like Guangzhou. Because even if these seeds are bought, they cannot be planted in the lower reaches of the Pearl River Delta. Since few people planted them, the supply was naturally less. Kongtai was able to buy 500 kilograms of tung oil seeds and 300 kilograms of lacquer tree seeds because he paid a high price and collected a lot of loose goods to get so much. Of course, if Kongtai could stay in Guangzhou for a year or two, he would definitely be able to buy more for a long time. However, because he did not obtain the qualification for tribute trade, Kong Tai would definitely not be able to stay here for a long time. Therefore, this hasty acquisition action naturally did not yield much. But these are not few. 1 kilogram of tung oil tree seeds can reach thousands of seeds, and this is because tung oil seeds are relatively large. According to the safe point method of planting 2 or 3 seeds in a pit, seeds may not germinate after being sown, so add 2 more neutrons for insurance. If all 3 seeds germinate, then the best growing one will be left in the end, and the other 2 will be pulled out. Of course, if the land area is sufficient, the other 2 pulled out, may not germinate, can also be transplanted to other places, but their growth will definitely not be better than the one kept. Even if we conservatively calculate based on the low germination rate of half, 1 kilogram of seeds can still grow 400 to 500 tung trees. The seeds of lacquer trees are much smaller, and 1 kilogram of seeds is estimated to grow more than 1,000 lacquer trees. Therefore, as long as they are well cared for, the 500 kilograms of tung seeds and 300 kilograms of lacquer tree seeds purchased by Kong Tai can still grow at least more than 20,000 tung trees and more than 30,000 lacquer trees. As for the 5 kilograms of bamboo seeds are very light, and 1,000 seeds weigh only about 24 grams. There are more than 20,000 bamboo seeds in 1 kilogram. If it is 5 kilograms, there are more than 100,000 seeds. Even if only half survive, 50,000 bamboos can be planted. Moreover, this thing grows fast, jumps up fast, and has extremely strong vitality. Seeing that these 3 kinds of seeds could not be purchased, and the purchase of skanda was still in progress, Kong Tai did not want to be idle, so he opened up another purchase business, tea purchase. You know, because Europe and Ming dynasty have not yet opened a sea trade route, and the Earl Grey milk tea invented by Marin is popular all over Europe, resulting in extremely high tea prices in Europe now. It takes a war horse to exchange for a 4-pound tea brick. And the price of a war horse is about 100 gold coins. Therefore, the current price of tea in Western Europe is as high as 25 gold coins per pound, which is ridiculously high. Marin also forgot to ask Kong Tai to purchase tea, but Kong Tai knew how popular tea was in Europe. Apart from anything else, European nobles now like to use Earl Grey milk tea as a drink when entertaining guests. Of course, this is for entertaining distinguished guests. For ordinary guests, it is more economical to drink red wine. The real reason is that tea is too damn expensive. You know, the tea bricks obtained by Europeans were obtained by the Ming dynasty in the tea horse trade with the Mongols on the northern border. The Mongols could exchange 120 kilograms of brick tea, that is, 30 tea bricks, for a Mongolian warhorse. But when it was transported to Europe through the land trade route, 1 tea brick could be exchanged for a warhorse, and the price increased 30 times. In fact, the Ming dynasty's tea horse trade was already a ruthless slaughter of Mongolian merchants. In the territory of the Ming dynasty, tea was even cheaper. In the Guangzhou market, the price of a kilogram of good bud tea was 81, which was 0.08 taels of silver. An ordinary leaf tea was only 21 per kilogram, which was 0.02 taels of silver. As for brick tea, it was even lower in grade and was a low-end existence among leaf teas. The most expensive leaf tea was about 41 per kilogram, also known as fine tea. And the low-end leaf tea was brick tea, which was only 15 per kilogram. Of course, the black tea bricks produced in Anhua, Funan are more famous, and the price is 21 per caddy. However, even if Anhua black tea is 21 per caddy, a 4-gene tea brick only costs 81 in the Ming dynasty, which is 0.08 taels of silver. However, the black-hearted Ming dynasty officials used 30 tea bricks to exchange for a superior Mongolian warhorse. If you calculate the cost, even if Anhua black tea is used, it is only 2.4 taels of silver. Using other unknown tea bricks, the cost is lower. However, in the territory of the Ming dynasty, the price of a war horse is more than 10 taels of silver. Therefore, the tea horse trade in the Ming dynasty actually pitted the herdsman uncles, raising the price several times. However, the grassland people have no way to deal with this. Because this business is completely unique to the Ming dynasty, if you have the ability, don't buy it. Kong Tai also heard about Anhua black tea from Ma Lin, so after failing to purchase the 3 kinds of seeds, he began to inquire about the source of Anhua black tea. In fact, Marin doesn't like to drink black tea. He prefers green tea like Longjing. But the problem is that green tea, including the later black tea, which has not appeared in this era, has a short shelf life. Generally speaking, the shelf life of green tea is only about 1 year, while that of black tea is 18 months, which is 1.5 years. However, at the current speed of ships, it takes 10 months to sail back to Europe from Guangzhou, Nimad. The tea shipped back to Europe is about to expire. How can it be sold? Therefore, black tea with the longest shelf life has become Marin's first choice. You know, even if black tea is loose tea, the shelf life is 5 to 10 years. And the shelf life of black tea brick tea is more than 10 years. In other words, if you ship black tea bricks back, you don't have to worry about the tea going bad. Unless you import too much and you are hungry, you can't sell it at all. However, because of Marin's promotion, Earl Grey milk tea is very popular in Europe now, mainly because coffee has not yet become popular, and everyone can only drink milk tea. Therefore, as long as you don't import too much, you can still sell it out within the shelf life. With a shelf life of more than 10 years, merchants can stock up with confidence. And what is the profit of black tea bricks? Kong Tai did some calculations. In Guangzhou, buying a brick of Anhua black tea is only 0.08 taels of silver. In the European market, the current price of a black tea brick is 25 gold coins. According to the gold-silver exchange rate of 1 to 12, it is worth 28.6 taels of silver. If the freight cost is not counted, the price has doubled by 357.5 times. This is more profitable than silk, porcelain, etc. Of course, if a large number of black tea bricks are shipped back, the price of tea in Europe will definitely drop. But even if it drops 3 times, and then the transportation cost is wiped out, there is always 100 times profit. Thinking of this, Kong Tai's heart is extremely hot. He stopped Skanda from buying porcelain and other space-consuming heavy goods, waiting for him to buy tea first. After asking around, Kong Tai contacted all the tea merchants from Funan in Guangzhou City, and bought 10,000 Anhua black tea bricks from these merchants at a high price of 100 yuan each, original price 80, Anhua black tea bricks, which is 40,000 kilograms of Anhua black tea. After that, he bought 2,000 other types of lower-grade tea bricks, and collected 48,000 kilograms of brick tea. If Guangzhou tea bricks were not out of stock, Kong Tai would have wanted to buy more. If these tea bricks were pulled back to Europe, they could be exchanged for 12,000 war horses. Of course, this is when the price of tea has not dropped. But pulling so many tea bricks back will definitely cause the price of tea to plummet. However, no matter how much it falls, there is still a profit of more than 100 times. The silk and porcelain purchased by Skanda were already available in Europe, but the quality was not good. The quality of Ming silk was better, but it could only be sold at 10 times the price, compared to the low price of Ming, and the profit was only several times. The profit of porcelain was slightly higher, because Europeans did not know how to make porcelain, so this business was unique. An ordinary porcelain bowl could be sold for 1 gold coin after being shipped back. The purchase price of ordinary porcelain bowls in Ming was only 5 yuan. This seemed to have a profit of more than 200 times. However, the market for those ordinary porcelain bowls was limited, and the purchase price of those gorgeous porcelain bottles and jars was also relatively high. In total, the profit was only a few dozen times. This profit margin was higher than silk, but lower than brick tea. However, although the profit of porcelain was high, transportation was a big problem. Because porcelain was fragile. If it was randomly piled in a cabin and encountered strong winds and waves, the porcelain would easily break. Therefore, when transporting porcelain, special wooden frames and boxes were needed, and cushioning materials such as cotton were filled to fix the porcelain. Therefore, the transportation of porcelain is a big problem, and it takes up a lot of space. Unlike raw silk and tea bricks, which can be densely stacked. Therefore, in the end, the profit of porcelain is 20 to 30 times at most, which is not as good as brick tea, and only slightly higher than raw silk. Therefore, when loading the ship, Kong Tai asked for limited loading of tea bricks, followed by raw silk. Finally, load porcelain and other goods. Sure enough, because the wooden boxes and wooden racks required for porcelain take up a lot of space and weight. In the end, Kong Tai made the decision and only kept those exquisite porcelains, such as high-end porcelain with patterns such as blue and white porcelain. As for the ordinary celadone bowls and other low-end porcelains with bare appearances that were swept from small porcelain shops, they were all abandoned. Of course, they were not thrown away, but given to Ding Haishan, the supervisor of Guangzhou Maritime Customs. Although these porcelains are difficult to resist, they are large in quantity and are worth more than 100 taels of silver. Kong Tai said that the deposit was in Guangzhou Maritime Customs, but before leaving, he secretly told Ding Haishan, whatever you want to do with it, that is, let him exchange it for money. In addition, in order to make room for high-end and profitable goods such as tea bricks, porcelain, and silk, most of the rice seeds purchased by Sikanda were also abandoned by Kong Tai, and only a few sacks were kept for seeds. The rest were directly thrown on the dock, and the people in the governor's office were notified to take them and give them to the hungry people. After filling the cabins of the 3 ships, Kong Tai called Columbus, who had been fooling around in Guangzhou Qinglu these days, and urged him to set off. Because Columbus did not understand Chinese, he could only let Kong Tai and Sikanda handle all the contact with Daming. As for himself, his old problem came back and he could not control his lower body. Kong Tai also knew the problem of this guy, but fortunately, the silver he brought this time was very sufficient. So, Kong Tai found the largest Qinglu in Guangzhou, stuffed a few large silver ingots into the old procuress, and let Columbus live in a Qinglu directly. He didn't call this guy back until he was done. When Columbus came out of the Qinglu, although he was not drunk, his steps were shaky, obviously exhausted. In desperation, in order to prevent Columbus, the great navigator, from dying during the voyage, Kong Tai had to spend a lot of money to find a famous doctor in Guangzhou City, and prescribed several precious tonics, intending to replenish Columbus' kidneys during the voyage. Otherwise, this guy would definitely die before returning to China. Chapter 759 I Want to Be the Toast. The 3 ships left Guangzhou port, but after leaving the Pearl River estuary, they did not go south, but turned east. Originally, when leaving Guangzhou port, the Malacca envoy Naji asked Columbus and his men to wait. Because the craftsmen they wanted to explore and smelt tin mines had not arrived yet. The craftsmen of the Ming dynasty were so miserable, like slaves. After receiving the letter from Malacca Sultan Mahmud requesting support for several craftsmen to explore and smelt tin mines, the Guangdong Provincial Administration Office, which was in charge of the tribute trade of Guangzhou Maritime Customs, agreed to it without waiting for the approval of the capital. However, the Guangdong Provincial Administration Office did not have such talents under it, nor did it have large-scale tin mines. However, Pingel Prefecture in Guangxi, now the area of Hezhou City, Guangxi, next to Guangdong Province, was the most important tin-producing area in the Ming dynasty. The Guangdong Provincial Administration Office was not very familiar with the Guangxi Provincial Administration Office, but was familiar with Chen Jin, who served as the Governor-General of Guangdong in Guangxi and the Governor of Guangdong. Therefore, Shen Rui, the left governor of Guangdong, directly asked Chen Jin to go to Pingel Prefecture to get a few craftsmen for exploration in smelting tin ore. As the governor of Guangdong and Guangxi, Chen Jin did not interfere in the specific local government affairs. However, he was still the boss of the officials of Guangdong and Guangxi in name. Therefore, it was no problem to go to Pingel Prefecture to ask for a few craftsmen. So Chen Jin agreed. For this, Najib also gave Chen Jin several large pearls. As a maritime country, Malacca does not have much else, but it is not short of pearls. The unfortunate craftsmen had no say and were directly sold by the masters. In the eyes of the civil officials of the Ming dynasty, craftsmen were just a group of working slaves, and they were sent as they pleased. However, it was not so fast to get a few craftsmen from Pingel Prefecture. It would take a long time after a set of procedures were completed. Therefore, Najib had to wait for a while. At the same time, Najib also hoped that Columbus's fleet would wait for him to return to Malacca together. However, Columbus's fleet had other tasks. What were their tasks? It turned out that before setting off, Marin asked the Columbus fleet to look for Dongfan Island, which is Taiwan Island in later generations. Why look for Taiwan Island? Naturally, they want to set up a trade transit station on the island. At present, Taiwan Island has not been developed and is desolate. The Ming dynasty did not attach importance to maritime interests. It took the initiative to give up Dongfan Island and shrink its power to Penghu Island, mainly to monitor the Taiwan Strait waterway. As for Dongfan Island, it was ignored. Marin could not understand why the Ming court ignored such a large island as Dongfan Island. You say that you don't attach importance to the development of islands. Xiong Island has been developed a long time ago, and the Ming dynasty also established Cheongzhou Prefecture. Taiwan Island is larger than Cheong Island, and there are more plains on the southwest coast, which is very suitable for development. Therefore, Marin is very confused about this. However, this is also a bargain for Marin. The location of Taiwan Island is very important. It faces the Fujian province of the Ming dynasty, which is conducive to trade with the Ming dynasty. In addition, starting from the north of Taiwan Island, along the Ryukyu Islands, you can also reach Japan. Moreover, it is very convenient to go to Southeast Asia from here. Therefore, Dongfan Island is simply an excellent transit station for maritime trade. Therefore, after the Dutch occupied Taiwan Island, they launched a prosperous maritime trade with the Ming dynasty and Japan, which was very prosperous for a while. If it were not for the powerful Zheng Qinggong later, the Dutch maritime trade might have continued to prosper. In fact, neither the Ming dynasty or the Qing dynasty paid much attention to Dongfan Island, and even ignored it. In the early years, the Ming dynasty called Taiwan Island Little Ryukyu. In fact, this so-called Little Ryukyu is 9 times larger than the real Ryukyu kingdom. The Qing dynasty did not pay much attention to Taiwan Island. The reason why Shi Lang was sent to unify Taiwan Island was because there were a large number of Ming dynasty royal families on Taiwan Island. Kong Matsi was worried, so he asked Shi Lang to take them all back and take care of them. After taking back Taiwan Island, the Qing dynasty actually left Taiwan Island there and didn't care much. This also led to the fact that until the late 19th century, Taiwan Island only developed the west coast and northern regions. As for the east coast, it was not developed much. It just so happened that Marin needed an opportunity to trade with the Ming dynasty. However, because there is no other vassal state of the Ming dynasty to prove its existence in Beihai state, and the civil servants of the Ming dynasty will never risk their lives and sail tens of thousands of miles to Europe to see what is going on. Therefore, Marin's plan is to occupy Taiwan Island first and establish a native state similar to the Big Du Kingdom. Then, in the name of the chieftain of the native state, he requested to submit to the Ming dynasty. If it can be granted as a vassal state, it would be the best. If not, Marin plans to directly apply to become the chieftain of the Ming dynasty and directly incorporate Taiwan Island into the territory of the Ming dynasty. The chieftain system is a very special system, similar to the autonomous region in later generations. However, it is more autonomous than an autonomous region, because the chieftain position is hereditary. In addition, the court's management of the chieftain is also particularly laissez-faire. Even the taxes paid by the chieftain are very few, much lower than the taxes in the Han area. Even at the beginning, how much tax the chieftain had to pay was declared by the chieftain himself. Let you report the amount of tax yourself, how much can you report? Therefore, the taxes of the chieftain are very few. Of course, the Tutsi in the southwestern minority areas, where most of the people are mountain people, live in the village, and are indeed poor and have little money to pay taxes. It is not popular to travel to the minority mountain villages these days, so the southwestern villages at that time were very poor. Even if the Ming dynasty wanted to collect more taxes, it was impossible. The biggest difference between the Tutsi system and the autonomous regions in later generations is probably self-government of its soldiers. In other words, as a Tutsi, you have actual military power. Therefore, the power of Tutsi is much greater than those of the vassal kings. Of course, it cannot be compared like this. Because the vassal kings of the Ming dynasty were raised like pigs and had no rights at all. With military power and autonomy, Tutsi is basically equivalent to an independent kingdom. However, compared with vassal states such as Korea and Ryukyu, the official rank of Tutsi is much lower. The king of Korea is a prince, and the king of Ryukyu is a county king. They are both super-grade kings. And those Tutsi are generally hereditary prefects and other official positions, which are much lower than the king. In addition, the difference between Tutsi and vassal states is that while paying a small amount of taxes, they also have to pay tribute. Those overseas vassal states, except for those close to them, can pay tribute every 2 to 3 years or even every 5 years. But Tutsi, because they belong to the territory of the Ming dynasty, requires tribute every year or every 2 years. The reason for this is actually that the court loves face and is afraid that the number of vassal states that pay tribute is too small to create the formation of all nations coming to pay tribute. For the feudal dynasty, this is very embarrassing. Therefore, letting those low-level Tutsi make up the number is the best way. Even some minority leaders who only occupy a few villages can be named Tutsi. If these Tutsi who are just playing soy sauce are brought to the grand court meeting in the capital, there will indeed be a big group. So many people are bustling, plus the strange costumes, it can indeed set off the illusion of all nations coming to pay tribute. For this reason, the Ming dynasty urged these Tutsi who came to pay tribute very diligently. Of course, these Tutsi will never suffer. Often these poor chieftains brought mountain products to the capital, but when they returned, they brought back silk and satin as rewards from the court. However, the biggest advantage of chieftains was that they could trade freely with the Ming dynasty. Because, legally speaking, chieftains were the territory of the Ming dynasty. It was not considered going abroad for Ming merchants to go to the chieftain's jurisdiction, or for chieftains' people to go to the Han area to trade, and they were relatively free. At most, they were extorted by those officials for protection fees. Unlike those vassal states, they were generally only allowed to conduct fixed-point trade when they came to pay tribute. However, tribute was only once a year at most, which could not satisfy Marin's appetite. Therefore, Marin's plan was to occupy Taiwan Island and then try to apply to become a chieftain of the Ming dynasty. As long as he became a chieftain of the Ming dynasty, Taiwan Island would be considered domestic. At that time, trade and so on would be unrestricted. Therefore, the purpose of Columbus's trip was to discover Taiwan Island. Then, record the longitude and latitude coordinates. When the road in Panama is repaired and Panama City is built, we can use Panama City as the starting point and take the route used by the Manila galleon trade in history to reach Taiwan Island and occupy it. Then, we can bring the entire island of Taiwan and ask to submit to the Ming dynasty and become a chieftain. Once we become our own people, it will be very convenient to buy supplies. After all, the other side is Chuanzhou Prefecture. Even Columbus's destination for this trip had already been arranged by Marin, Shiliao Island in Keelung, which is part of Heping Island in later generations. There are many considerations for deciding here. First of all, Marin plans to use the Pacific route to contact the Ming dynasty in the future. Keelung faces the Pacific Ocean and is a very suitable port. In addition, Marin also plans to send troops to control Japan in the future, at least to occupy Iwami silver mine. Therefore, it is most appropriate to use Keelung as a springboard. In addition to these two factors, there are two other factors that are also very important. First, there is a very large gold mine, Jingguashi Gold Mine, in Jingguashi, east of Keelung. Generally, gold mines with a reserve of dozens of tons of gold can be considered as very large gold mines. The gold reserves of the Jingguashi Gold Mine are estimated to be more than 500 tons, and the taste is very high. The second point is also very important, that is, Shiliao Island in the north of Keelung is separated from the main island. Establishing the first base here can avoid being attacked by the natives on the main island. You know, the natives on Taiwan Island are very fierce. Especially the Gaoshan people, compared to the Pingpu people, they are the best at jungle warfare. If you land directly on the main island, you will be easily harassed by the natives day and night. The Dutch colonized Taiwan and almost suffered a big loss at the beginning. Later, the Dutch colonists saw that the natives were too fierce, so they used deception to buy a large piece of land, and then built a solid castle in Tainan as a stronghold. Then, they gained a foothold on the island of Taiwan. Later, the Spanish also colonized the island of Taiwan. They were also smarter. They directly occupied the pirate Shiliao Island at the mouth of the Keelung River and built a castle on Shiliao Island. Shiliao Island is not connected to the land, and it faces the Keelung River directly, so there is no shortage of fresh water. Therefore, the Spanish choice is also very good. In addition, Marin needs to consider the factors of the Pacific route, the occupation of Japan and the development of the Jingguashi gold mine. Therefore, Marin decided to learn from the Spaniards and build a castle directly on Shiliao Island. Then, when the strength is sufficient, he will conquer the main island. After conquering the main island, he would apply to be a chieftain of the Ming dynasty. Therefore, the main purpose of Columbus's visit to Taiwan this time was to find Shiliao Island. After finding it, he recorded the longitude and latitude coordinates to facilitate the fleet departing from Panama City to find the island. With the coordinates, even if the route deviated, it could be corrected. Chapter 760, Occupation of Savannah. While Columbus and Conti arrived in Guangzhou and purchased various seeds, Marin was not idle in his homeland. On the one hand, Marin ordered that 20,000 brave men be selected from the hundreds of thousands of people under his rule and began to train them actively to train them into militias to surround the homeland. On the other hand, Marin was also considering where to plant the seeds after Conti purchased them in Guangzhou. Obviously, the seeds of tung oil, lacquer tree and bamboo purchased by Conti are not suitable for planting in the colder climate of the North Sea Kingdom and England. After all, these are native plants in the subtropical region. If you want these plants to grow well, it is best to choose a place with a similar climate for them to grow. Originally, Marin planned to arrange for planting in Cuba. After all, Cuba has a tropical climate and does not have the cold that these crops fear. However, Marin was worried that these crops would not grow well in Cuba. Although Marin is not a biology student, he also knows that some crops are not good if they are too cold or too hot. It would be best if it was a place with moderate coldness. Since these tung trees, lacquer trees, and bamboos are all native plants in the subtropical region, the most suitable place for them to grow is still the subtropical region. So, Marin turned his attention to the southern United States in later generations. First, Marin chose the Florida Peninsula. After all, the Florida Peninsula is to the north of the Havana colony in Cuba. It is very convenient to send troops to colonize the Florida Peninsula. Moreover, when returning to the North Sea Kingdom from the Cuban colony, the ships also pass through the Florida Strait, which is very convenient. So, Marin drew a map of the United States in later generations based on his memory and began to circle and dot the Florida Peninsula. As a pseudo-basketball fan, Marin also chased the NBA for several years in his previous life. That was when Yao Ming played for the Rockets. Marin was still in middle school, but he and a group of friends often skipped classes to watch the Rockets games. However, after Yao Ming retired, Marin, a pseudo-basketball fan, immediately stopped watching the NBA. His friends despised him, but he argued, "Damn, I watch the NBA to watch Yao Ming, what does that group of old blacks playing have to do with me?" In fact, Marin is face-blind to black people. If Jordan hadn't worn the number 23 Bulls jersey, Marin might not have recognized the basketball god. Of course, Marin can still recognize Kobe and O'Neal, who look very distinctive. In fact, in his previous life, Marin had a misunderstanding. He saw James wearing a number 23 jersey, and just looking at the front, he actually mistook it for Jordan, which made a group of authentic basketball fans laugh to death. Marin was angry at the time, damn, who told him to wear a number 23 jersey? And it was red. The most important thing is that James didn't wear a headgear that time. Then, Marin mistook it for Uncle Jordan. With such face blindness to black people, it would be a miracle if Marin could be interested in the NBA. Thinking of these interesting things in his previous life, Marin smiled. Then, he drew a circle on the point of Miami. This is where the Miami Heat is located, and it is also an important area where O'Neal stayed before retiring. Although he didn't know a few NBA stars, Marin still knew them. O'Neal is definitely a legend in the NBA. It's not because of his good playing skills, but because he is so strong that he is unreasonable. He relies entirely on his body and crushes his opponents like a tank. When the young Yao Ming first landed in the NBA, he was squeezed by O'Neal's fat. Later, he had to gain weight to strengthen his ability to fight. Marin smiled and planned to finalize the matter. However, thinking of Yao Ming's experience, Marin suddenly flashed a bad memory in his mind. It was in 2008, when a super earthquake occurred in Wenchuan, causing heavy losses. Of course, these are not the main content of this memory. The main content of this memory is related to Yao Ming's donation. It turned out that when the earthquake just happened, Yao Ming immediately donated 500,000 through the Yao team. However, netizens were not happy. Why? It turned out that before that, a severe hurricane broke out in Florida. That time, Yao Ming was said to have donated $2 million. So, many people stood up to criticize Yao Ming. You donated $2 million to the disaster in the United States, but you only donated 500,000 yuan to such a disaster in China, and it was soft sister RMB? Then, the newspapers were full of quarrels. Fortunately, Dayo reacted quickly and donated tens of millions of yuan immediately to settle the storm. Of course, the above is all nonsense. The important information that Marin got from this memory is that there are many hurricanes on the Florida Peninsula. Then, more memories about hurricanes jumped out from the depths of Marin's memory. According to those deep memories, Marin remembered that it seems that the Florida Peninsula is a high-incidence area for hurricanes in the United States. In addition, Texas, which is also on the coast of the Gulf of Mexico, and Louisiana, which is at the mouth of the Mississippi River, are also hard-hit areas by hurricanes. However, the two states of Texas and Louisiana combined have not suffered as much damage as Florida from hurricanes. It seems that every June and October, Florida is always visited by hurricanes. This is just like the island of Taiwan is always visited by typhoons, otherwise, typhoons are not called typhoons. Thinking of this, Marin immediately gave up the plan to put the planting area in Florida. He treasured these seeds very much. If they were planted on the Florida Peninsula and accidentally hit by a hurricane, all the previous efforts would be wasted. So, Marin opened the map and began to look for other suitable places. Texas, ruled out, it was also a hurricane-prone area. Although the number of hurricanes was not as high as Florida, it was not less. Louisiana, also ruled out. Even several states in the northern Gulf of Mexico had to be ruled out, as this was a hurricane-stricken area. So, let's move north. Marin's pen moved up on the map. Obviously, inland areas would not work. After all, inland transportation was inconvenient. Marin's colony ship was difficult to enter, and even if it entered, it was easy to be ambushed by Indians. Therefore, he could only choose the coastal areas. The Gulf of Mexico coast was ruled out, so he could only choose the Atlantic coast. Although the Atlantic coast might also be hit by hurricanes. However, the number of hurricanes was much less. Because it seemed that most hurricanes were blocked by the Florida Peninsula, a tentacle extending out of the continent. Marin scanned the east coast of the United States in the future, and circled a few cities in the coastal area according to his memory. But after circling a few cities, Marin was surprised to find that it seemed to have been selected. Why? Because there are only a few large cities on the east coast of the United States: Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Norfolk, Savannah and Jacksonville. Boston, New York, and Philadelphia are directly excluded. Because they are not subtropical climates. But Norfolk. Marin is not sure whether it has a subtropical climate. It seems that Norfolk is hovering between the temperate zone and the subtropical zone. Jacksonville has a subtropical climate, but Jacksonville is a city in Florida. If a hurricane breaks out in Florida, it will be difficult to escape here. So, there is no need to choose, it is Savannah. Savannah is an important port in the southeastern region of the United States in the future, and it is a port at the mouth of the important river Savannah River, and it is also a deep water port. This is perfect. You know, in the era of wooden ships, the port is best to be a freshwater port to prevent shipworms from biting through the bottom of the ship. Savannah is not only close to the sea, but also the estuary of the Savannah River. Therefore, it is very suitable for colonization. In addition, in terms of climate, this place is very similar to the Zhejiang and Fujian areas of China. The seeds that Conti purchased that are suitable for growing in subtropical areas will definitely grow well in Savannah. And, most importantly, this Savannah River is also very important. Marin must open up a large area of land in the early stage to colonize here. But in the era without machines, it is very hard to open up land. In particular, those fields, in order to find irrigation water, are best to be on the riverside. Obviously, it is much more convenient to open up land along the Savannah River than to open up land in a place without rivers. In addition to planting tung oil, lacquer trees, and bamboo, rice and wheat are also suitable for growing along the Savannah River. Of course, whether the japonica rice suitable for planting in the north is suitable for growing in Savannah, this needs to be tried. If it doesn't work, open up a colony a little further north, such as Norfolk, which is better. In addition, Marin also plans to open up cotton planting of upland cotton varieties obtained from Mexico in Savannah. After all, in the original history, Savannah was an important export port for American cotton. Before the Civil War, Savannah and New Orleans were important ports for the export of cotton from the south to Britain. In addition, Savannah means tropical and subtropical, treeless prairie in English. Therefore, Marin estimated that there was probably a subtropical treeless prairie in Savannah. The difficulty of reclaiming prairie and reclaiming forest cannot be compared. To reclaim prairie, just let the old cow hang the plow and turn the soil. To reclaim the forest, you have to cut down trees first. Cutting down trees is not the most difficult thing. The most difficult thing is to dig out the roots of those original tall trees. This workload is very large. Anyone who knows a little bit knows that the bigger the tree, the bigger the roots, and the wider the coverage area, so it is quite troublesome to dig. Although digging out the roots can get a lot of firewood, but before there were excavators, those who dug the roots manually knew. Therefore, it is much easier to reclaim a grassland near a river than to reclaim a forest. If you ask where is the most suitable place to reclaim in the Americas, Marin will choose the Pampas in Argentina without hesitation. Because the Pampas is directly beside the famous La Plata River Parana River, there are no big trees, and it is not too easy to reclaim. Therefore, Argentina in later generations can easily become a major agricultural and animal husbandry country in the world with this unique natural condition. In fact, Argentina's natural conditions are much better than Australia. After all, although Australia is large in area, it is seriously short of water, while Argentina is not short of water. However, Argentina is too far away from the European mainland. If the fertile land is reclaimed and it attracts the covetousness of other countries, it will not be worth the loss. Because if Argentina is occupied by other countries, it will take a year or two for the news to be passed back to the country, and it will be difficult to react. By the time they react and send troops to recapture it, the enemy has been operating there for a long time and has established a foothold. Therefore, Marin might as well manage the east coast of North America, which is close to it. And Savannah is the place that Marin needs most. After thinking it over, Marin ordered to send 5 ships to occupy the place of Savannah in the future. However, Savannah seems to be an inland port, not on the Atlantic Ocean. Marin remembered that Savannah seemed to be 32 kilometers away from the Atlantic Ocean. At the mouth of the Savannah River, there was a Tybee Island. Marin's order was to first land on Tybee Island at the mouth of the river, a sandbar island with an area of only 6 square kilometers, similar to Chongming Island, but much smaller, and build a bunker. Then, through bribery and other means, buy the land of Savannah from the local Indians. After buying the land, immediately build a city. After the city is built and has a firm foothold, drive out the local Indians and annex the area along the Savannah River.